Chapter 583. The imperial edict now represented the demonstration and symbol of Lu Qingdi's power. Li Hongyuan's stomp on it was undoubtedly a trampling and contempt of his power, a provocation and humiliation to his supreme authority. For Lu Qingdi, this was even more unbearable and infuriating than the threats made by Prince Kong and Prince Rue in the open and in the dark. Li Hongyuan, he roared furiously. Don't be so loud. I'm not deaf. Li Hongyuan said disdainfully, save some words. I've been tired of hearing them for a long time. You can't come up with anything new. And don't accuse me of those crimes. Standing here is the best proof. What's wrong with the title? He laughed carelessly. I didn't take reputation seriously before, and I won't take it seriously in the future. If I want something, I must get it. It doesn't matter whether you give it to me or not. Whoever has the ability to take me down, just do it. If he does, I'll praise him for his ability. It was because of his indifferent attitude that he seemed invulnerable. You couldn't do anything to him. Seeing that Lu Qingdi was about to die of anger, Li Hongyuan's eyes fell on Li Hongming. Devil? The important officials are still in the main hall. Why don't we go there now and talk about it? Let's see if they will try their best to stop us. After that, Li Hongyuan waved his sleeves, turned around, and went out. The rest, including Lu Qingdi, were all driven out to the main hall. Did they want to stay put? He Zhihai was a real killer. He had killed the important officials in the imperial court for Li Hongyuan's promotion. He really didn't care about killing a few more. Except for Lu Qingdi, there was no one he didn't dare to kill. Well, Lu Qingdi was Li Hongyuan's father. To be honest, it was not that he didn't dare to kill him. But after all, he was Li Hongyuan's father. Therefore, when he Zhihai grinned and held the knife to cut Prince Rue's arms, legs and neck, no one dared to hesitate. Although they were staggering, only a few of them could maintain their composure. Emperor Lu Qingdi, the Empress, and the imperial concubine needed someone to support them. Their shoulders were drooping and they were trembling. This seemed to be a sign of their fate. In the main hall of the Thousand Years Hall, it was also very quiet. Although the imperial guards did not enter, they were heavily guarded. Even if they did not know the situation next door, they could more or less guess what was going on. Especially since the two martial governors had left midway and had not returned. But those who wanted to go out were all blocked back, waiting anxiously. The people at the door receded like the tide. The people in the hall got up, and then saw Jin Qinhuang striding in. How many people sucked in a breath of cold air? Their legs and stomachs couldn't help but tremble. Regardless of when he came back, just by looking at this posture, it made people feel bad. As expected, people came in one after another. Regardless of whether they were high-spirited or elegant, they were either dispirited or full of resentment at this time. For a moment, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Li Hongyuan stood in the middle, looking at the position of the throne. In the end, he did not directly walk up. It was not because he still had some scruples, but because he disliked that seat. After a moment, he turned a small circle, and with a smile that was not a smile, he seemed to sweep his eyes over everyone. Darren, I'm afraid that you still don't know what happened. It doesn't matter. Yu Zhongqing, tell us what you know first. He Zhihai, tell us what happened outside the palace. Yu Zhongqing responded with a grunt. He started from when Prince Rue tried to recruit him, to when Prince Kong came knocking on his door, and then Prince Rue asked him to cooperate with Prince Kong to beat him at his own game, and take down Prince Kong, so that he could rightfully take the throne. After that, he narrated everything that happened in the side chamber in full detail, without any personal feelings. After he finished speaking, he Zhihai stood up again, and eloquently recounted Shen Shuhan's defeat. Obviously, these two people's positions were very clear. Yu Zhongqing was alone, so it was fine. However, He Zhihai's position represented the position of the He family at this moment. Unless the He family immediately stood out to sever their relationship with He Zhihai, it was a pity that his parents and grandmother were all present. No one stood out, which meant that they tacitly approved of He Zhihai's actions. And the position of the He family was the position of the Northeast Army. The imperial edict that still had Li Hongyuan's footprints was also brought over and thrown on the ground not far from Li Hongyuan. Li Hongming said that he was the crown prince wisely conferred by imperial father. He is the legitimate heir. Everyone, tell me, do you recognize this imperial edict or not? Li Hongyuan still spoke in a casual tone. However, no one who heard this felt relaxed. I recognize it. Before anyone else could speak, Lu Qingdi spoke up coldly. Many people gasped. Looking at the actions of the living king of hell, he didn't take anyone seriously at all. Your Majesty, are you worried that your third son won't die quickly enough? Prince Rue was first agitated, then he couldn't stop his blood from turning cold. Evil creature, I'm telling you, I will give the throne to anyone but you. If you want to sit on that throne, I will definitely not recognize or agree to it. If you have the ability, kill everyone here. Imperial Father's bones have hardened. However, didn't you hear what I said in the side hall? To put it bluntly, what's the point of killing them all? There are tens of millions of people in Qi Yuan. What's the point of killing them all? Also, don't talk to me about killing, karma, and going against the heavens. Even if everyone in the world dies, I won't even blink. Do you understand? Li Hongyuan smiled. He was still as magnificent as ever. However, even those who were loyal to him were terrified when they heard this. And no one would doubt the truth of his words. Although they already knew that Prince Jin's temperament was not good, he was ruthless and unpredictable, but they didn't expect him to be so cold-blooded. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was devoid of humanity. Such a person. What else could tie him down and restrain him? Kinship, filial piety, loyalty, they were all nonsense to him. He wasn't afraid of anyone and didn't judge him. Evil creature, with your temperament, who would work for you? What can you do when you become a loner? Lu Qingdi's voice was cold and hateful. This official pledges to serve Wang Ye with my life, to be the sharp blade in Wang Ye's hand. I will follow Jun's orders. As a fanboy, He Zhihai didn't say anything and immediately knelt down on one knee to express his loyalty. Looking at that attitude, he really hated that he couldn't sacrifice his life for Li Hongyuan, and wouldn't hesitate to kill everyone in the world. Lu Qingdi's words of alienation didn't have half an effect before it was torn apart by He Zhihai. Then among the officials, there were people who looked at He Zhenwei and secretly said, "This old thing, a military general, a boorish man." His son was a muddle-headed person, but unexpectedly, his flattering skill was first class. This official is willing to follow Wang Ye's orders. I will follow Jun's orders. Yu Zhongqing was the second to express his stance. This official is willing to follow Wang Ye's orders. I will follow Jun's orders. Qin Tianming came in with a group of people. The sound of armor was very loud. The Northeast Army is willing to follow Wang Ye's orders. I will follow Jun's orders. At this time, He Zhenwei also walked out from his seat and knelt in front of Li Hongyuan. If Lu Qingdi still had a little hope before, and wanted to use the officials to suppress Li Hongyuan, at this time, he only felt his brain buzzing and retreated a few steps. If he wasn't supported by someone, he probably would have fallen to the ground. In fact, it didn't matter whether the civil officials expressed their stance or not. Now these people, the whole capital and the surrounding large areas were completely in his hands. If he really wanted to carry out a bloodbath, the others were just lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Li Hongyuan looked at Lu Qingdi with a faint smile. As he said, what he wanted was not a matter of whether others gave it or not. You can't be the emperor. You are a devil. You will bring misfortune to Qi Yuan. Lu Qingdi seemed to be holding on to his last breath and still refused. After all, only a few people knew about this. Lu Qingdi's public outburst caused a commotion. However, in reality, the impact was not as great as imagined. After all, he had already said that everyone in the world would die. If things did not go as he wished, then the bloody storm he would stir up would not be as simple as not being ominous. Li Hongyuan didn't even bother to argue at this time. It was very boring. Instead, his gaze fell on Li Hongming. Li Hongming, are you still thinking about how to escape? You have the guts to force the emperor to abdicate. Is it because the former Wei is gathering its troops and preparing to attack Qi Yuan? How many benefits did you promise to the former Wei when you colluded with them? It should be no less than 3 counties, right? When these words came out, everyone uniformly looked towards Prince Rue. One had to know that Qi Yuan and the former Wei were mortal enemies. Even if it was the peacemaking faction, When facing the former Wei, there was absolutely no reason to shrink back. Colluding with the former Wei, that was absolutely intolerable. Li Hongming felt as if he was about to be cut into pieces by someone's eyes. The clothes on his back were quickly soaked with sweat in the middle of winter. Li Hongyuan, you're slandering me. Li Hongyuan scoffed lightly, his gaze turning, landing on Lord Su, the Minister of Rites. As a member of the imperial family of the former Wei, coming to Qiyuan to climb up and go through hardships, it has been hard on you. The Minister of Rites was originally very calm. Even if Prince Rue was defeated, he believed that Prince Rue would not betray him, because whether he could make a comeback in the future depended on himself. However, he didn't expect that his old background would be exposed. However, with his strong self-control, he didn't show any emotions that he shouldn't have. At first he was stunned. Then he panicked and felt wronged. Your Highness, what are you saying? Your Highness, this official. You don't need to act. For me, there is no need for evidence. Your Highness, I have evidence to prove that Prince Rue colluded with the former Wei and committed treason. Princess Lu took this opportunity to stand up without hesitation. She didn't hesitate at all, and directly knelt in front of Li Hongyuan. Originally, as Li Hongyuan's sister-in-law, she didn't need to be so courteous. Her actions only showed that she already regarded Li Hongyuan as the monarch. Prince Rue's eyes were red with anger. He pounced on her as if he wanted to strangle her to death. However, he was kicked aside by He Zhihai. Lucier, don't talk nonsense here. Get out of here. Prince Rue roared sternly. In fact, his actions proved that he was indeed colluding with the former Wei. Otherwise, no matter how well he usually pretended, he wouldn't have lost his composure like this. Lucier was unmoved. Her face was very calm. She took out the evidence she mentioned. It was enough to show that she was prepared and cautious enough. There were a few letters. They weren't just from Lord Su. There were also letters from the former Wei Emperor. Li Hongyuan casually opened them and took a look. These letters weren't originals. He knew that it was good enough that Lucier could see the letters. If she tried to steal the originals, she probably would have died without a burial place. Where are the originals? Are they still here? Replying to Your Highness, they should still be here. Li Hongming has always been suspicious and cautious. He wouldn't easily burn such important things. There should be a secret compartment in his study. Li Hongyuan nodded slightly. He didn't need evidence. He only needed to see some information. Therefore, it didn't matter whether the originals were here or not. What do you want? I only ask that Your Highness spare my 3 daughters. They are girls and won't be a threat to Your Highness. Since she saw through it, this was all she asked. Yes, Your Highness. Whether Princess Lu was sincere or not, she was not a person like Ruan Fangfei. She was born and raised in Qiyuan. Everything she cared about was in Qiyuan. Therefore, she couldn't cause any trouble. Li Hongyuan didn't mind letting her go. After all, he wasn't a murderous maniac. Thank you, Your Highness. After getting what she wanted, Consort Lu felt relaxed. Even if she was a woman who betrayed her husband and would be condemned by everyone, she didn't care at all. Everyone looked at Princess Lu and had different opinions. As the saying went, the husband should be the wife's leader. As the husband, he should be the wife's everything. A woman who stabbed her husband in the back would be scolded badly. However, as women, especially mothers, they could understand her behavior. Therefore, they just sighed in their hearts and didn't say anything. However, when they looked at Li Hongming, they felt that he was unlucky. The first time he was stabbed in the back by the woman he slept with, he was demoted to a commoner. This second time he would probably be killed. Li Hongyuan still didn't let Lu Qingdi go. He looked at him with a smile and said, "This is the crown prince you admit. He betrayed the country. From these letters, we know that he promised 4 counties of the former Wei kingdom, millions of taels of silver, and many other rare treasures. If he really got his way, the power of Qiyuan would be reduced by at least 30% in a short time. Will the former Wei kingdom give up? Will the southern Qi kingdom not take the opportunity to rob? The Xiongnu were beaten so badly that they are waiting for a chance to take them back. The day when the Qiyuan will be divided is not far away." Lu Qingdi trembled. He couldn't even lift his hand. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he blacked out completely. Once he fell, he would never have the chance to get up again. Your Majesty. There were many people who were worried about him. However, after taking 2 steps forward, they paused. To be honest, once an old man lost his supreme power, he had nothing left. No one would revolve around him anymore. Everyone was looking at Li Hongyuan now. They would act according to his mood. Li Hongyuan was still indifferent. Send Imperial Father back to his chamber, and call for the Imperial physician. In addition, take Li Hongyi and Li Hongming into the prison and deal with them when Imperial Father wakes up. Detain the relevant family members in the residence and wait for their punishment. The concubines and concubines in the harem are to return to their respective palaces. If Imperial Father is well, naturally everyone is well. If something happens, someone will have to be buried with him. As for the people who participated in the forced abdication, they will be thoroughly investigated by the blackguard. After that, Li Hongyuan flung his sleeves and left. The remaining people looked at each other. That was it. The 99 steps had already been taken. There was only 1 step left. Was he stuck here? At least finish it all in one go. It was the handover of the throne. Just write an imperial edict and stamp it with the imperial seal. How simple was that? Why didn't you carry out the high-pressure policy to the end? At least let those who had other thoughts succumb to your abuse of power. You didn't have any intention at all. Were you forcing those imperial censors to jump out and oppose? If they didn't jump out, they would be disloyal to their duties. How could they endure without an excuse? Quick, who could stop the King of Hell? With his character, if he continued to cause trouble, many people would die. Yuan, don't go. Don't go. Imperial concubine Su suddenly rushed out and fell at Li Hongyuan's feet. She grabbed his clothes. For the sake of our mother-son relationship, can you spare Imperial concubine mother? Imperial concubine mother loves you. Really, do you believe Imperial concubine mother? Yuan. Li Hongyuan lowered his head and looked at her. He didn't kick her away, but his eyes were a little cold. Imperial concubine Su swallowed. From the first time they officially fell out, she knew that this adopted son was extraordinary. However, she never thought that he was extraordinary to this extent. Just one look was enough to make people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Even if Imperial concubine mother has wronged you, even if my words don't mean what I say, I still raised you and gave you the best of everything. Even if you don't give Imperial concubine mother's face, Imperial concubine mother won't ask for much. Just leave Imperial concubine mother's dignity. Anyway, Imperial concubine mother won't live for long. Yuan, Li Hongyuan half-squatted. Even if in your heart, you only want your own son to sit on the throne. In fact, I can forgive you. I once thought of sitting on the throne and letting you enjoy the glory. Imperial concubine Su's eyes flashed with hope. Li Hongyuan smiled. Seriously, he had smiled a little too many times in front of outsiders today. However, I gave you a chance but you didn't take it. When I was 10 years old, you gave me a slow-acting poison to destroy the foundation of my body. Once a month, for 3 consecutive years. If you hesitated once and stopped once, I would have left you some glory. However, do you still remember your performance at that time? You spoke gently and asked about my well-being. Even Imperial concubine mother, who is related by blood, can't be compared to you. In fact, I'm quite curious. How did you do it? Imperial concubine Su's expression froze on her face. It was like a bolt from the blue. You know all about it? I know. I knew from the first time you did it. If I didn't know, wouldn't you have succeeded? Not only do I know this, but I also know that you gave me the sterilization powder when I was 13 years old. It's a pity that you still didn't succeed. Perhaps you thought that it was just a coincidence that one got pregnant. After all, the sterilization powder has a very small chance of getting pregnant. It's just like how your daughter-in-law got pregnant for the 3rd time after your son was poisoned with the sterilization powder. However, it's a pity that Wanwan's pregnancy wasn't a coincidence. The reason why she didn't get pregnant before was because her body wasn't fully developed and the situation wasn't stable, so she used contraception. You women have nothing better to do, but use this to attack her. It makes me very unhappy. Li Hongyuan's words were particularly gentle at this moment. However, not only imperial concubine Su, but Jingwan's sisters-in-law also kept quiet out of fear. They regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. They shrank back, afraid that Li Hongyuan would turn around and settle the score with them. Li Hongyuan stood up and kicked imperial concubine Su away. Madam Su, don't worry. You won't die so easily. After all, to reach this step today, your contribution is very big. In his previous life, he really did want to assist Li Hongming in ascending the throne. Unfortunately, it was all ruined by this woman, making him suffer enough and fall down. The only good thing was that without those experiences, he probably wouldn't have known Jingwan, and he probably wouldn't have stood up again. However, these people also deprived him of his final spiritual sustenance. When imperial concubine Su heard this, she wanted to ask for a quick death. Look after her. If she dies, all of you will be buried with her, Li Hongyuan said to Lu Qingdi's chief eunuch. At this time, what else did they dare to do? They naturally hurriedly agreed, and then stared unwaveringly at imperial concubine Su. However, everyone's understanding of imperial concubine Su went up a level. Truly, one may know a person's face but not their heart. Her kindness to Jin Qinhuang was recognized both inside and outside the palace, but she was so ruthless behind his back. However, it seemed that Jin Qinhuang was even more terrifying. 10 years old, he didn't know anything, but he avoided all harm under the eyes of imperial concubine Su's people. Was he still human? He was simply an evildoer. Well, to a certain extent, Li Hongyuan was indeed an evildoer. However, in the end, they still overestimated him. In the end, he was only a human, not a god. In his previous life, he was a real child. How could he escape imperial concubine Su's schemes? It was because he didn't escape that later. Even if he ascended the throne and gathered the world's famous doctors and the best medicine, he still couldn't live for more than a few years. He was indeed the final winner, but he also suffered too much and lost too much. Li Hongyuan left the palace in a carefree manner, but the rest of the people were not so relaxed. However, as Jingwan's grandmother, old Madame Luo took the lead at this time. The palace is in chaos. We should leave the palace and return to the Fu now. There will be a plan for what to do next. Many people agreed, especially those women with titles. They had suffered quite a bit of shock, so it was best to leave first. However, when they entered the palace, each and every one of them was estranged from the Luo family. At this time, they all unconsciously gathered around old Madame Luo. They didn't even care about their face, and held old Madame Luo from head to toe. Especially those who didn't leave any manners and offended the Luo family. Now they were so careful that they almost slapped themselves. Old Madame Luo really didn't have any interest in these people. She waved her hand and ignored them. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/160594424. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 584. The Imperial Guards obeyed Yu Zhongqing's orders and detained the relevant personnel. Of course, there were only 3 people at the scene, 2 princes and 1 minister. Prince Rue glared at Yu Zhongqing with hatred and unwillingness. Even if there was no way to salvage the situation, he still couldn't calm down. Yu Zhongqing, didn't you boast of being absolutely loyal to Fu Huang? How did you become Li Hongyuan's dog? What can he give you that this prince can't afford? Prince's brother-in-law colluded with others to defile this official's fiancée and caused her death. Is this reason enough? As the saying goes, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. This subject does not want to do anything to others, but if your highness does not fall, how can this subject touch your brother-in-law? In addition, what prince shouldn't have done is get involved with Lord Su from the former way. He is the main culprit who destroyed my Yu family. If it wasn't for this official wouldn't have gotten involved in the struggle for the throne. However, Prince Jin is a good master. He will be a wise ruler. Prince Rui was being held down and gasped for breath. So this was the reason. The Lu family was indeed his bane. And those with the surname Su, obviously, this Su was not only referring to the Minister of the Board of Rights, but also his mother. Of course, if he knew that Su Mingzhang had betrayed him early on, he would probably go mad with anger. Prince Rui was taken away. Yu Zhongqing turned around and looked at the Minister of the Board of Rights who was staring at him. The other party suddenly smiled. It was clear that he was more tolerant than Prince Rui and the others. Perhaps he had already prepared himself for this. There was actually a fish that escaped the net in the Yu family, and even let you climb to the position of Grand Commander of the Imperial Guards. This is unexpected. Your father knew some things about me. In order to prevent any accidents, I naturally had to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Yu Zhongqing's originally calm face could no longer be maintained at this moment. He clenched his teeth and gripped the hilt of his saber tightly. Only then did he not draw his saber and kill the other party. In the imperial prison, this official will properly entertain Lord. This sentence was practically squeezed out from between his teeth. Then this official will wait respectfully. The Minister of the Board of Rights' smile didn't change. Clearly, he was deliberately provoking Yu Zhongqing. However, Yu Zhongqing's tenacity was also beyond expectations. He was not provoked. He was very clear that this person still had value and could not be killed directly. When Lu Chengdi was sent back to his bedchamber, all the imperial physicians had arrived. It was impossible to hide what had happened today. However, the details of what had happened in the palace were different. Even if Li Hongyuan hadn't given the order to keep it a secret, some things probably wouldn't have been revealed. Now all the important officials in the imperial court were waiting for Lu Chengdi to wake up. Of course, if he didn't wake up, there would be another set of rules. Seeing that Lu Chengdi wouldn't wake up for a while, it didn't matter. It wouldn't hinder them from dealing with other matters. However, they wouldn't wait forever. At most, in 3 days, if Lu Chengdi didn't wake up, they, the civil and military officials, would jointly request Jin Qinhuang to ascend the throne. After all, the country couldn't be without a ruler for a day. Jingwan was extremely surprised to see Li Hongyuan return. Why are you back so soon? She even thought that he would not return to the Wangfu. Wan, this husband suddenly doesn't seem to want to be the emperor anymore. Li Hongyuan directly gave Jingwan a shock. The expression on Jingwan's face froze, and then cracked little by little. What kind of joke are you making? Because he would be the emperor, and she would sit on the empress's throne. Following that, she would accept the empress's rights. This was the right cause and effect. It wasn't that she wanted to be the empress, and then fully supported her husband to fight for the throne. Therefore, the empress's position to her was just an accessory. If there was, she would accept all the rights and duties. If there wasn't, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, he didn't want to be the emperor now. Those people who worked hard to help him and took great risks to reach this step. Seeing that they were about to pick the fruits of victory, he, as the boss, suddenly didn't want it anymore. Would they agree? Stamping with rage was light. If they were angered, they might hang themselves in front of the Wangfu's gate. Moreover, Jingwan didn't think about the possibility of him not being the emperor. She had already planned some things. Only when she sat on the throne and had his full support could it be convenient for her to do things. He also knew this. If he didn't become the emperor, wouldn't her hard work be in vain? Well, it wasn't that he couldn't bear it. After all, it wasn't really hard. But didn't you say that even if there was no qualified successor, you could easily destroy it? Now you want to give it to someone else? If someone else sits on the throne, they will also be a puppet. So this matter should still be decided by you. Why do you have to do something superfluous? Moreover, have you ever thought that if our children are good enough but are not princes or princesses, if they want to sit on the throne, they will be criticized without a proper reason? When we are here, I definitely won't worry. But after we are gone, won't our children and grandchildren become the puppet emperor's targets to be eradicated? Also, don't underestimate the power of those officials who are supporting you now. Also, don't underestimate the power of the imperial family. For the sake of benefits, they can do anything. There are a lot of implications here. So don't think about it all and be willful, okay? Jingwan was really helpless and couldn't help but poke his face with her hand. Can't you do less things that make people go crazy? Li Hongyuan grabbed Jingwan's hand and gently bit her white fingers. He smiled but didn't say anything. Hey, what do you mean? Give me a definite answer. Jingwan felt that he should be joking. But this bastard, he really could do anything. If he acted up, she couldn't figure out what he was thinking. Jingwan was suddenly worried about her future. Once her husband had the right to speak in his hands, the entire world would be at his mercy. Sometimes he would play with it on a whim. It was a rhythm that would drive her crazy in a matter of minutes. So he simply didn't want to be the emperor? However, thinking about it carefully, his ability to cause trouble didn't seem to weaken because he couldn't sit in that position. Moreover, if he became the emperor, he could barely be restrained in the imperial palace and the capital. If he didn't become the emperor, there would be no restrictions from above. When he ran around the world, how much trouble would he cause? No matter how she thought about it, it was a headache. Li Hongyuan saw that his wife's face was anxious, and always liked to let her imagination run wild. He really didn't know what to do with her. He hugged her in his arms and kissed her. Jingwan couldn't resist. She gave up and let him kiss her to his heart's content. When she was released, her lips were bright red with water, looking especially seductive. Li Hongyuan's thumb gently rubbed her lips. His smile didn't fade. He looked the most gentle. Coupled with his beautiful face, it could make people dizzy in seconds. However, Jingwan's immunity was absolutely strong now. She bluntly rolled her eyes at him and slapped his hand away. Li Hongyuan naturally didn't get angry. He was still smiling happily. Jingwan looked at him, feeling puzzled. A certain person seemed to be more and more off. Why did it feel like he was a bit crazy? Although this hadn't happened before when his illness acted up, it didn't mean that it wouldn't happen to him. Li Hongyuan covered Jingwan's eyes with one hand and kissed the tip of Jingwan's nose. His wife was really so lovable. He was just making her happy, but her reaction was so interesting. Li Hongyuan turned around and hugged Jingwan into his arms. He rubbed his face against her hair. Things wouldn't change anymore. The only thing was, Li Hongyuan caressed Jingwan's stomach from time to time. His eyes were a bit gloomy. Jingwan nestled in his arms and raised her head to look at him. What's the situation in the palace? Originally, the Wangfu was still waiting for people to come. In the end, there wasn't even a shadow. Jingwan expressed that she wasn't disappointed. Really, there wasn't even a bit of disappointment. According to the plan, the normal procedure of forcing the abdication was to control the emperor's ministers inside the palace and surround the various houses outside the palace. If it was an enemy's house, there would probably be a kill order. As the public enemy, Jin Qinhuangfu would definitely be the #1 target to attack. Jin Qinhuangfu attracted more firepower than just this. There were also countless riches. The result, Li Hongyuan gave a brief account of the situation in the palace. So to say, towards Prince Rui, it was us who underestimated him. Jingwan said flatly. However, even if they underestimated him, it was still the same. For example, they originally thought that he only had 60 points, but he achieved 80 points. In front of 200 points, he was still crushed. As for whether he really didn't want to be the emperor anymore, Jingwan didn't get a clear answer and didn't pursue it. In the next 2 days, they clearly experienced a drama of forcing the abdication. However, Jingwan felt that there wasn't any difference from the past. She even suspected that a fake palace coup had happened. Well, that was indeed true. Those who wanted to find Jingwan to pull strings were definitely not in the minority. However, Jin Qinhuangfu's door was not open. Even the thick-skinned He Zhihai was thrown out. Naturally, no one dared to come. According to reason, Li Hongyuan should be quite busy. However, things weren't like this. The matters in his hands were even less than before. It seemed that he was about to grow hair. Jingwan looked at him hesitantly several times. Being a shopkeeper who left his work to others so smoothly, she could already foresee the misery of the court officials in the future. What Jingwan didn't know was that it wasn't only the court officials who were miserable, but also herself. Moreover, the misery of the court officials had actually already begun. After the palace coup, there were many things that happened. The emperor had not woken up, and the future emperor didn't care about matters. Some things, the court officials had the right to suggest, but they didn't have the right to decide. Therefore, they could only drag it out. However, the people who participated in the palace coup were pulled out one by one. As the main offenders, they were basically sent to the prison of the blackguard. The rest, as well as many of their family members, were all sent to the prison of the Ministry of Justice. Even if it was complicated and involved a lot of people, no one was soft-hearted and determined to uproot some people. In the short span of 2 to 3 days, although there was no bloodshed, the entire capital was in a state of panic. Even those who did not participate did not have the slightest bit of joy. As for those who were related, they ran around as much as possible, wanting to do something for the people in prison. Among them, the Luo family was the first to bear the brunt of this. It couldn't be helped. Li Hongyuan didn't have an external family. The closest relationship with him was his wife's family, the Luo family. Moreover, Li Hongyuan's importance to Jingwan had basically become a consensus. Therefore, it was normal to find the Luo family. In this case, even if the Luo family wanted to close the door and decline the guests, it would be very difficult. There would always be people who could find a way to find connections to visit, just like those people who were related to the Luo family by marriage. These people naturally couldn't make things too stiff. Among these people, there weren't many who needed old lady Luo to personally come out to receive them. Jingwan's aunts and uncles were different. Basically, they were welcoming and sending people off without stopping. Especially Zhangshi, who was the mother of Jin Qinhuang's Wang Fei. She had never been so popular, and she wasn't very good in this aspect. However, she still remembered old lady Luo's words. In short, no matter who it was, no matter what they said, pretend not to understand and don't respond to anything. Zhangshi also felt wronged. What, if it was really like this, after this matter was over, her reputation as a naive and sweet would probably spread throughout the capital. However, in order to not cause trouble for her daughter, she still resolutely carried out her mother-in-law's words. The younger generation wasn't spared, especially Sun Yijia. Most of the people in Duke Ding's Fu were in prison, but it was unknown how many of them were married off. Those elders all cried and begged in front of her. They didn't even care about their status and directly knelt down in front of her. This was already not begging, this was coercion. Sun Yijia's face was so dark that it could drip water, but she stuck to her principles and didn't agree to anything. It was obvious that this kind of attitude naturally angered those people. The crying and begging turned into shouting abuse. What heartless liver, no conscience, ungrateful wolf. These were actually more civilized. In the end, because the noise was too outrageous, they were driven away by old lady Luo's people. Sun Yijia didn't cry, but it could be seen that she was very uncomfortable. Looking at her made one's heart ache. If this was the case, it would be better for her to cry. The important ministers who weren't involved were still waiting outside Luqing Emperor's bedroom. Out of the 4 ministers, there were only 3 left. Other than the Minister of Revenue who had already retired and no one had been arranged to fill the vacant position, there were only 3 of the remaining 5. Other than the Minister of Rights, the Minister of War had also retired. Wait for another half a day if, Darren, His Majesty is awake. The chief steward by Luqing Emperor's side immediately came out to report. When these elders entered, the imperial physicians hurriedly retreated to the side. Greetings, Your Majesty. However, Luqing Emperor couldn't speak clearly. His mouth was obviously a little crooked, and his right hand was bent inward. The emperor had a stroke and was paralyzed. Almost immediately, these big shots received this understanding. But this was also good. Wan Ruizhong didn't get up. Instead, he calmly reported everything that had happened after the palace coup. Luqing Emperor seemed to want to say something, but unfortunately, no one understood. In fact, they didn't need to understand. No matter what Luqing Emperor wanted to say, his words were no longer important. After the general situation was explained, it was time for today's highlight. He reprimanded Prince Kong and Prince Rui for their rebellious behavior, and let down the emperor who raised and taught them. He said a lot of things with great emotion. Then he said that the country couldn't be without a ruler for a day. Now that the emperor's health was not good, he should abdicate the throne and rest in peace. That's right, he didn't appoint a crown prince to govern the country. He should abdicate the throne directly. Luqing Emperor's eyes widened. It seemed that his eyes were saying, "I'm not dead yet." The elders kneeling in front of him didn't care whether they understood or not. Except for the one who spoke, the others all looked down and ignored him. Since one person was going to be the emperor, he naturally had to start from among the princes. The two princes who had been in prison were definitely not suitable. As for the other princes, although they already knew that they had been drugged, in terms of descendants, only Li Hongyuan was left. However, they didn't want to use this to stimulate Luqing Emperor. Besides, even if they didn't have descendants, they could adopt them from the clan. They believed that many people would be very happy. Therefore, this was not a hard condition. Excluding the younger princes, all the princes in front of him had various shortcomings, from birth, to temperament, to ability. After all, it seemed that only Li Hongyuan was left. They began to praise Li Hongyuan. His birth mother was the imperial noble consort, and the imperial noble consort was called the vice-empress. In this way, Li Hongyuan could be regarded as half a legitimate son. Just this point alone made him much better than the others. Then they praised him in other aspects. They basically picked up what Luqing Emperor had said before from head to toe, from inside to outside. There was nothing bad about him. This kind of person was a natural-born emperor. The throne, who else could it be but him? What made people stare blankly, was this really a living king of hell? Even if Jin Qinhuang didn't want his reputation and didn't care about it, they couldn't not care about it. An emperor's reputation sometimes involved the stability of the country. Therefore, he must be covered up, whitewashed and packaged. For example, the fact that he was a devil and participated in the forced abdication. Not a single bit of it could be leaked out. Even if there were many people who knew about it, as long as they didn't have a problem with their brains, they would definitely not mention it. There was no need for Li Hongyuan to give a gag order. They would all take the initiative to seal it. Yuan Ruizhong had said everything that needed to be said. Then he personally wrote an imperial edict for succession. Then he sent the imperial edict and the imperial jade seal to Luqing Emperor, asking the emperor to use the seal. And the current Luqing Emperor simply didn't have the strength to pick up the imperial jade seal. Moreover, he was so coerced it would be strange if he could use the seal. He also glared at Yuan Ruizhong with resentment and hatred, as if he never knew this capable Grand Secretary. Yuan Ruizhong lowered his eyebrows and restrained his gaze, appearing very respectful. He held Luqing Emperor's hand and stamped the imperial jade seal. The anger in Luqing Emperor's eyes almost condensed into substance. Afterwards, Yuan Ruizhong returned to his original position with the imperial jade seal. This official will solemnly obey the emperor's imperial edict. Getting up, he earnestly exhorted a few words to take good care of the emperor. The others saw the whole process in their eyes and gasped in amazement. Powerful ah, powerful ah. Even Luo Peishan sighed at his own inferiority. There are some things that must be done by someone. Yuan Ruizhong held the imperial edict and faintly sighed. This official is already so old, it's almost time. When the new emperor ascends the throne, I still need everyone's assistance. Everyone, this official will retire and return to his hometown. When the others heard this, they were mostly silent. They understood Yuan Ruizhong's meaning. He would take responsibility for this matter. Of course, it would be best if there were no problems. They had all seen Jin Qinhuang's attitude. Instead of letting him use bloody means to achieve his goal, it was better for them to give him a path and let him rightfully ascend the throne. This way, they could avoid the deaths and injuries of innocent people, and also prevent a possible movement. Moreover, in terms of ability, Jin Qinhuang should be the best candidate. Although they had never seen him do anything, but they could catch a glimpse of what he did behind the scenes. The only thing they needed to worry about was probably his temperament. If he was really temperamental, alas, Luo Peishan shot a glance at Yuan Ruizhong and inwardly scolded the old fox. He didn't believe that he would be so righteous and sacrifice himself for others. This was clearly an opportunity to claim credit. However, if they didn't know what the other was doing behind the scenes, they might have been deceived. It was all the same. Just because he was Jin Qinhuang Fei's grandfather, if it was him who did it, he would definitely be seen as being selfish. If it was this old fox who did it, people would sigh and even bow to express their gratitude. Elder Cabinet is righteous and cares for the common people. We are not as good as you. Hearing this, Luo Peishan's lips moved, and he lowered his head to prevent himself from accidentally not concealing his emotions. Let's not talk about it. Right now, the capital is in chaos. We should respectfully invite the new emperor to ascend the throne and preside over the overall situation. Ruan Ruizhong flicked his sleeves. Exactly. Thus, a group of people majestically left the palace and went to Jin Qinhuang Fu to announce the imperial edict. At this time, it was naturally not the turn of the eunuchs. When these people left the palace, the news naturally spread out at the fastest speed. Before they even reached Jin Qinhuang Fu, all the people who should know already knew. It wasn't that there wasn't anyone who knew that it was wrong to let Li Hongyuan sit on the throne alone. However, after thinking about it, they didn't stand out in the end. To die for honor, this kind of thing like leaving one's name in the annals of history, wasn't something that everyone had the courage to do. Especially when facing Li Hongyuan, that kind of person, if you died, you would have died in vain. The elders of the inner pavilion, led by several ministers, knelt in front of Jin Qinhuang Fu and held up the imperial edict, respectfully inviting Jin Qinhuang to ascend the throne as the emperor. And this imperial edict, although it was within expectations, Jingwan still felt that the efficiency was a bit high. It was done so quickly? There wasn't even a bit of struggle in his heart? Li Hongyuan seemed to see what she was thinking and pinched her lustrous white earlobe without earrings. The current court's outstanding talents are more than you expected. At any time, there was actually no lack of people with integrity. It was just that, sometimes it was hard to say. Then Wangya, what do you want to do? Don't you plan to go out and receive the imperial edict? Seeing a certain someone who was indifferent, Jingwan always had a bad idea. They invited Ben Wang to ascend the throne, so Ben Wang will ascend the throne? Li Hongyuan cast a glance at her. https://www.bicken.com/11807/161100621. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com mobile edition reading website, and bicken.com. Chapter 585. Because of Jingwan's inaction, some people really hardened their hearts. This time, Li Hongyuan seemed to be prepared to be willful to the end. Originally, in everyone's opinion, even if he was reserved, it would be fine. When they were rejected at the door at the beginning, the officials were already mentally prepared. It wouldn't matter if they invited him 3 or 4 times. However, after 5 or 6 days of continuous visits, they were still rejected at the door. This was a bit too much. The originally calm officials were no longer so calm. They scratched their ears and cheeks, frowning. If this continued, there would be no one to preside over the court, and the world's big and small matters piled up. Sooner or later, something was going to happen. Under this kind of situation, it wasn't that no one doubted whether Jin Qinhuang really had no intention of taking the throne. Of course, just as this thought appeared a little, it was jointly extinguished by others. He had done so many things before, did he have nothing better to do? Therefore, even if you beat them to death, no one would believe that he had no intention of taking the throne. There were still some people who were eager to take action, but before they could do anything, they were seen through by some people's sharp eyes. Without another word, they would beat them up first. Just like how Qin Tianming beat up his son-in-law, the Gong Prince. This time, he really beat him up. He didn't care about his status and was quite ruthless. Other than his face, there probably wasn't much normal skin and flesh on his body. If you want to die, find a rope and hang yourself. Don't King implicate others. Qin Tianming's words were not polite, but the Gong Prince didn't dare to say anything. The 2 examples before him were still in prison. He didn't know what would happen to them. Therefore, the number of people who went to Jin Qinhuang's residence increased. From the tail of these big shots, more and more officials followed. Not only that, the members of the imperial family also came out. From the old man whose seniority was comparable to Li Hongyuan's great-grandfathers, to Li Hongyuan's grandchildren, there were really a lot of them. Then even his brothers came out, crying and wailing, including the Gong Prince. It was as if they couldn't do without him. At this time, Madame Luo also came to Jingwan. Others couldn't see her, but Jingwan wouldn't refuse Madame Luo's visit. When Jingwan faced her grandmother, she also felt very helpless. She was very suspicious. Did he really experience the previous life and become an emperor? Look at what he did. Did it look like something a mature and rational person would do? If you really don't want to be the emperor, just say it directly. Alright, even if you say it, probably no one will believe you, and no one will agree. Even if they agree in their hearts, they won't say it out loud. Who knows if you are setting a trap right now, waiting for some of them to jump out, so that you can legitimately catch them all in one go. They weren't that stupid. Wang Fei, please persuade His Highness. It's not good to keep waiting like this. There will definitely be trouble. Wang Fei is in a lot of inconvenience now. It's really not advisable to let some unnecessary trouble disturb your peace. Old Madame Luo said to Jingwan and glanced at the other side of the room. Jingwan smiled. Grandmother, don't worry, I will persuade him. Now you. This subject will take her leave first. Jingwan hesitated a little. In fact, she was a little reluctant. This is also good. It's cold. Grandmother should be careful. Don't catch a cold. Princess, don't worry. The people around her are very attentive. Nothing will happen. After sending Madame Luo away, Jingwan went to the compartment to see Li Hongyuan. Under the bright window he was half leaning and reading a book, but she didn't know how much he was reading. Jingwan was almost 7 months pregnant. Although she wasn't as careful as other pregnant women, she was slightly clumsy. Li Hongyuan hurriedly got up to support her. Jingwan refused and leaned in his arms, sitting opposite him, face to face with him. It's been so many days, His Highness must have had enough fun. Shouldn't you say enough is enough? Jingwan said with a smile. A few days ago, Jingwan might have doubted his true thoughts, but these 2 days, she knew that he was purely acting up. What do you mean by fun? I'm fishing. Li Hongyuan was very self-righteous. Okay, fishing, but the current situation is that the fish doesn't dare to take the bait. It will not dare to jump out easily in the future. If you continue to fish like this, you will probably annoy the court. No matter what you think, they will think that you have no interest in the throne, and will look for another candidate. Li Hongyuan smiled lightly with a bit of sarcasm in his eyes. Give them 100 times the courage to try. His line of sight fell on Jingwan's stomach. She really shouldn't have caused any trouble, but it was about time. Li Hongyuan reached out to touch her face. The palace is still in chaos. Wait for me to arrange it before I bring you into the palace. Jingwan nodded and smiled. You go, the Wangfu also needs to be tidied up. Li Hongyuan got up and kissed her on the lips before leaving. The door of Jin Wangfu finally opened. For the people who had been waiting outside for too long, it was a bit sudden. However, after a moment of daze, they reacted and hurriedly paid their respects. At this moment, there was a feeling of hot tears. It was so difficult to invite the new emperor to ascend the throne. The days in the future were simply unimaginable. Yuan Ruizhong was about to read the imperial edict when Li Hongyuan waved his hand. Enough! How this thing came about, everyone was well aware. Even if it was just a formality, Li Hongyuan wasn't interested in listening. Now everything was decided by him. The originally willful and rash person had no restraints, no worries. Li Hongyuan didn't stop and continued to walk out. The people on the outside hurriedly retreated like a tide, and the people who were originally at the front hurriedly kept up with his footsteps. Arrange the imperial carriage, welcome the new emperor into the palace. Li Hongyuan looked at the imperial carriage in front of him. It was obviously something that his old man had used before. Change it, everything that he used, change it all. Then use his prince's ceremonial guard to enter the palace. Those who didn't know would praise Jin Wangfu for not ascending the throne, and not using the imperial carriage. Those who knew could only hurriedly do as told and didn't dare to say half a word. The speed of entering the palace wasn't fast, and there was a group of old Darren following outside. No matter what, Li Hongyuan wouldn't be so deranged as to let them follow. Now the most important thing was of course the ascension. The date had already been calculated. However, without waiting for them to report the date, Li Hongyuan once again interrupted them. Put it on the 2nd of the 2nd month. Moreover, the Empress coronation ceremony will be held on the same day. Your Majesty, the time was a bit too tight. Moreover, the Empress had to be conferred. Wasn't this the rhythm of people being busy to death? Moreover, the local congratulatory gifts couldn't be sent to the capital even if they were slightly further away. Everyone was in a hurry, so there would be a pile of things to do. What, is there a problem? Li Hongyuan indifferently asked. The person who spoke quivered, replying, to Your Majesty, there isn't. If there isn't, then cut the crap. Li Hongyuan's tone was still flat, but it always made people feel that he was impatient. Li Hongyuan didn't wait for the following matters to be reported one by one. For example, the arrangement of the harem members. Although Emperor Lucheng was still alive, since he was paralyzed in bed, the existence of the concubines was no longer necessary. They were dealt with according to the rule of the death of the husband. As for those who were more important and special, the empress was abolished, the imperial concubine was demoted, and concubine Xian was demoted and had to serve Emperor Lucheng. When Emperor Lucheng passed away, she had to be buried with him. Concubine Shu was conferred the title of Grand Concubine. Of course, Li Hongyuan only needed to give these orders. He wouldn't ask about how to deal with them later. However, if it wasn't handled well, there would definitely be people who would suffer. After that, it was about the treatment of Li Hongyi, Li Hongming, and the others. Li Hongyuan didn't intend to kill these two people and directly demoted them to commoners. As for the rest of the people, those who should be killed were killed, those who should be demoted were demoted, those who should be exiled were exiled, and those who should be confiscated were confiscated. In short, there was only one word, according to the law. But at the end he added a sentence. Pardon without mercy. The people outside all praised the emperor for his wisdom. Originally, based on the previous attitude of forcing the emperor to abdicate, they were actually prepared for the emperor to start a massacre. They didn't expect him to be so benevolent, and were very surprised. However, it also made their hearts sink. It was better than expected. Perhaps it could be regarded as a good start. In addition, for the younger brothers and sisters who were not married, a princess residence was opened outside the palace and unified to educate the unmarried princesses. When they reached the age, all of them would be married off. There would be no princess residence. The rule that the emperor's son-in-law couldn't be an official was also abolished. The remaining younger brothers would all be conferred the title of a prince. However, it was only a title. The actual treatment was less than 1/10 of that of a prince. However, if they wanted to match the status of a prince, they had to work hard and strive for it. In other words, Li Hongyuan wouldn't suppress them. If they were capable, they could do it. They would be given real power and authority. These were really breaking the rules of the ancestors. Your Majesty, please don't. Shut up. I didn't ask for your opinions. You just need to do as I say. Hearing this, they could only swallow the rest of their words. The current emperor was completely different from the previous one. He made arbitrary decisions. It could be foreseen that the courtiers who had met him knew best in their hearts. Therefore, they all pretended to be mute and let others be the cannon fodder. After he finished talking about these messy matters, Li Hongyuan clearly did not intend to speak anymore. These matters had more or less covered most of the major matters in the capital. If there were still some minor matters that he needed to ask about, the next time, he would flare up at these officials. Although there was still a pile of memorials waiting for Li Hongyuan to read, these courtiers didn't need to follow his carriage anymore. After all, they were old. Even if they were slow enough, they would get tired after walking for a long time. The imperial palace was still under the strict control of the Imperial Bell Army. People in each palace were not allowed to enter easily. It was already the 8th day of the lunar month. From the top to the bottom, it could be said that everyone was in a state of panic. No one knew where the road ahead was, so they didn't care about the lack of food, accommodation, and other inconveniences these days. When Li Hongyuan entered the palace, although he knew that the time to decide his fate had come, he felt a sense of relief because he had been hanging in the air for too long. However, it was obvious that they couldn't wait for Li Hongyuan to deal with them. These trivial matters would obviously be handed over to the newly appointed internal court team headed by Eunuch Mu. Eunuch Mu was obviously familiar with the affairs in the palace, but he wasn't so clear about the things related to the dignity of the emperor. But it didn't matter. At this time, there were definitely a lot of courtiers who were willing to curry favor with him. No matter how high they used to be, in order to stay, they could lower themselves to the ground. The fact that Eunuch Mu could stay by Li Hongyuan's side for so many years without being replaced or dying was enough to prove his ability and intelligence. Therefore, it was not difficult to get started. The first stop was naturally to move the empress out of the Kunyi palace. As for the imperial edict, it didn't matter. They could make it up later. If Li Hongyuan forgot it, he would forget it. The entire Kunyi palace was changed inside and outside. However, the people in the Ministry of Internal Affairs were familiar with this kind of thing. Basically, it would happen every time the master changed. Therefore, a lot of things had been prepared. Although they didn't know why the empress's place was changed first, they didn't need to know. At this time, they just needed to bury themselves in work. It was just changing things. It was not like Jingwan's previous life, where there was a big renovation. Therefore, it was done quickly. Eunuch Mu looked inside and out. Except for the details, he was basically satisfied. The arrangement of these details could only be handled by the princess's nanny. Although the empress and the princess used different things, they still used the same things on a daily basis. In this case, it was estimated that a lot of things would be moved in from Prince Yu's mansion. Eunuch Mu was very clear that when he was in Prince Yu's mansion, he would change things slowly. He would not change too many things at one time, which would make people feel strange. He needed to be influenced subtly and take into consideration the princess's preferences. Of course, the entire Kunyi palace would not be staffed by the people in the main courtyard of Prince Yu's mansion. However, the Ministry of Internal Affairs had a lot of people. Many people tried their best to squeeze in. Therefore, when Eunuch Mu was lecturing, except for the people who should occupy the most important positions around the empress, the rest were all here. However, he still didn't know the background of these people. They could be all kinds of evil spirits. But it didn't matter. He could take it slowly. He didn't need to worry about this kind of thing. After dealing with it, Eunuch Mu went to report to Le Qingdi. At this moment, Li Hongyuan was dealing with political affairs in the imperial study. Although he didn't want to sit on that chair, the dragon chair was not easily changed. It took time to rebuild it, so he could only make do with it. However, Li Hongyuan disliked it very much and let people wipe it countless times. There were many officials under the imperial study. In the capital, all the officials above the third rank who were still in office were all in place. The number of people who had faced the real Li Hongyuan was still only a minority. In their view, although Jin Qinhuang's secret methods were exceptional, but in the end, he had not learned the arts of the emperor, nor had he come into contact with any political affairs. The affairs of the world were not the same as those of him before. Therefore, the majority only thought that he would be flustered, unable to sort out his thoughts, and would inevitably need their assistance. At that time, he must perform well. However, Ruan Ruizhong, Luo Peishan, Qin Tianming, and the others were very obedient. In short, if Li Hongyuan didn't ask, they wouldn't speak. If Li Hongyuan spoke, they would listen respectfully. If he asked, they would tell him everything. Anyway, it was not like facing the new emperor at all. However, when Li Hongyuan dealt with the matters one by one, his words were concise and comprehensive. He went straight to the point and was decisive. His efficiency was also surprisingly high. Those who originally wanted to show their skills unconsciously broke out in a cold sweat. Li Hongyuan also didn't get angry. His tone was even consistent from beginning to end. However, it still made people not dare to breathe loudly. Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan looked at each other. Their eyes were full of shock. Although they had already seen Li Hongyuan's ability to deal with things, now that they thought about it, he still restrained himself a lot. Was this like a new emperor? No, Le Qingdi, who had been the emperor for 20 to 30 years, was far inferior to him. Li Hongyuan was born to be an emperor. Originally, they thought that it would take a long time to clear up the matter. Li Hongyuan spent half a day. However, the area around the imperial desk was also quite chaotic. Li Hongyuan only read a few sentences of those useless memorials and threw them out. In the future, you don't have to hand in any memorials that only pay respects to me. Return any memorials that don't get to the point. Memorials that don't get to the point in 3 sentences should be sent back. Memorials for various matters should be separated by color. In short, all memorials must be known about the contents before they are opened. Once they are opened, the contents must be concise and accurate. If the memorials are returned 3 times, they will immediately be demoted by 3 ranks. Yes, Your Majesty, Juan Ruizhong respectfully replied. The fire had already burned before he ascended the throne. However, after seeing Li Hongyuan's power, no one dared to say a word. If they weren't careful, the memorials might fall on their heads. It was better to think about how to draft the regulations and implement the matter. After intimidating everyone, Li Hongyuan restrained himself a little. At least, he let these officials relax a little. We are currently short of manpower. 3 out of the 6 ministers are missing. There are still other positions. You all should know that after the ascension ceremony, it will be a court selection. There will also be an additional imperial examination. We are preparing to divide the imperial examination from the Ministry of Personnel and hand it over to the Ministry of Rights. You all should also be prepared. As soon as these words were spoken, it caused a lot of commotion. This was clearly weakening the power of the Ministry of Personnel. Some people secretly looked at Luo Peishan, faintly guessing that the new emperor was already preventing the relatives of the emperor from becoming too powerful. Luo Peishan was very calm. Previously, when Li Hongyuan and Jingwan were in Jiangnan, Li Hongyuan had presided over an imperial examination. At that time, Li Hongyuan had already mentioned some plans to him. Although he didn't know that Jingwan's opinion was mixed in, he had already considered these matters. The Ministry of Personnel's power was indeed a little too powerful, causing a serious imbalance among the 6 ministries. From a long-term perspective, this was not a good thing. Therefore, if Luo Peishan knew what they were thinking, he would definitely tell them that they were really thinking too much. After dealing with these matters, Li Hongyuan dismissed them. Time was tight. Therefore, it was obviously not advisable to let the Ministry of Rights complete the ascension ceremony. Now that the Minister of Rights was gone, Luo Peishan was probably still needed to be in charge of the regulations. However, later on, some people remembered that the 2nd of February seemed to be the birthday of the new princess consort. So the emperor chose this day for this purpose? Although it was somewhat inconceivable, there was always a voice in their hearts faintly telling them that this was the truth. Li Hongyuan went to see the Kunyi Palace and ordered people to make adjustments. Then everyone faintly felt that the new emperor seemed to be preparing to live in the Kunyi Palace. After all, there was a change inside and outside the palace, but he didn't even set foot in the emperor's bedroom. Although Lu Qingdi was still living in it now. Since the new emperor had ascended the throne, he would definitely move out. Based on Li Hongyuan's previous actions, no one would think that he was filial and would not force Lu Qingdi to do anything. Lu Qingdi had been waiting for Li Hongyuan the whole day, but Li Hongyuan seemed to have forgotten about him. And all the things in the palace, with Li Hongyuan's tacit consent, were actually all passed into his ears. He originally wanted to stay and not leave. He didn't believe that Li Hongyuan could kill him. Being unfilial was one thing. Killing the monarch and patricide was a completely different level. Based on Li Hongyuan's actions these days, Lu Qingdi didn't think that he really didn't care about his reputation. However, when he was ready to go all out, the result was that his fist didn't even hit the cotton. Lu Qingdi was fiercely angered again. At this time, Li Hongyuan returned to Jinqin Wangfu. When Jingwan saw him, she didn't say anything. She smiled and hooked her arms around his neck. It was unexpected, but reasonable. They talked about the outside world, which was basically the daily life between the husband and wife. So, Yuan, you didn't pay attention to him at all. Then where are you going to move him? In fact, Jingwan knew that her husband really wanted to kill the monarch. However, in this life some things didn't happen. Moreover, living might not be a good thing. Sometimes it was better to die than to live. Isn't there a palace in Mount Xiang? Let him go there. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/16110622. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, and bicken.com. Chapter 586. Ayuan Yu. Jingwan wanted to say something but stopped. What? Li Hongyuan looked down at her. Jingwan shook her head again. As long as he was happy, it was fine. Reputation was something that others put on him. He had never been someone who cared about what others thought. So why should she force him to care? Those people added together were far less important than him. In his previous life, he was not happy and unrestrained. In this life, he should be happy and unrestrained. Moreover, his status and ability gave him the right to be unrestrained. Of course, after becoming the emperor, he had no problem tormenting the ministers, but he could not torment the common people. As the saying goes, there was no absolute freedom. So everything had a bottom line. Thinking of this, Jingwan slowly smiled. However, Li Hongyuan seemed to know what Jingwan wanted to say. Wan, you have to know that your husband has never been a kind person. He holds grudges, is petty, and will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He has always only remembered the bad things of others and not the good things of others, unless he can be completely good and flawless. Obviously, Lu Chengdi and noble consort Su were the kind of people who actually treated him well, but not completely. Li Hongyuan saw through people and things very clearly. The scale in his heart was also quite clear. What about me? In your heart, do I also have the same standard? Jingwan asked curiously. You? Your husband will only go from bad to worse. Li Hongyuan skillfully held her waist and unceremoniously slapped her buttocks. This action made Jingwan embarrassed and angry. Her face was like a peach blossom. She opened her mouth and bit Li Hongyuan's shoulder. Li Hongyuan had been bitten by her many times, but he just let her do as she pleased. At this time, Jingwan could not really be ruthless. Moreover, it was winter. With Li Hongyuan's physique, he had to wear several layers of clothes. It was not so easy to bite his flesh. Therefore, Jingwan rubbed her cheeks after taking a bite. Li Hongyuan looked at her appearance and couldn't help but laugh. His wife now was more and more different from when they first met. But what could he do? He seemed to like her more and more. He liked her so much that if something really happened to her, he could poke a hole in the sky and flatten the earth. The husband and wife were in a harmonious state again. However, as the person who shared the same bed, if Jingwan were to say that she was the second in understanding Li Hongyuan, no one could claim to be the first. Therefore, after Jingwan sent Li Hongyuan off the next day, she wondered what else was in his heart. To be honest, Jingwan felt that he had been too gentle during this period of time. Although he had always been gentle and considerate, he would occasionally go crazy, throw a cold face, or even ridicule her. This was normal. This kind of gentle all the time was not like him. It was as if he was wrapping all his negative emotions in a shell, not allowing any of them to leak out. He was a person at the level of a demon king. Instead of venting his negative emotions, he wrapped them up tightly. When the day came that he would suddenly explode, who knew how terrifying it would be? However, Jingwan also clearly knew that in his current state, even if she asked, he would most likely answer perfunctorily. So, what was in his heart? Jingwan touched her stomach from time to time, a little lost in thought. Suddenly, the child moved again. Jingwan came back to her senses, and at the same time, she had a sudden flash of inspiration. In his heart, the most secretive thing was probably her death. And her death, in his opinion, was related to the child. However, Jingwan felt that if the dream she had was really something that had happened in the past, then in fact, it couldn't be completely blamed on the child. So, what he was worried about was actually her death? He was worried that she would leave him again. Jingwan lowered her head and was slightly silent. His heart was like a double silk net, with thousands of knots in it. Her death was the thousands of knots in his heart. No matter how many people's fates he changed, that day couldn't be crossed, and the knot in his heart couldn't be untied. So there were some things that were useless to say. Day by day, the irrelevant people in the palace were cleared out, including Lu Qingdi. When he said that he would be moved to Xiangshan, he was moved to Xiangshan. Even after Li Hongyuan ascended the throne, Wei Xian, who had been demoted to a palace maid, was moved to Xiangshan. No matter how much she cried, it was useless. Even bringing up her son didn't help. She even directly told her that if Lu Qingdi lived, she would live. So if she wanted to live at Xiangshan Palace, anyone could neglect Lu Qingdi, but she couldn't. Don't blame Lu Qingdi for having so many women. She was treated like this. In Li Hongming's collusion with the former Wei, she also played a role in it. The only person in the harem who hadn't been touched was probably Qin Shufei. She became the most special one, and naturally she couldn't be at peace. However, it was a special time now, and people outside the palace couldn't pass a token to enter the palace. So it was not difficult. The palace was tidied up. Li Hongyuan sent people to bring Jingwan into the palace. When he entered the palace, he was still the prince's guard of honor. Now Jingwan was the empress's guard of honor with the phoenix chariot. Everyone was there. If he didn't have something to do, he would have gone to pick her up himself. In this way, it was so high profile that it made people's hair stand on end. To put it more seriously, it was an overstep in his eyes. He should be severely impeached. However, this was the order of the king of hell. Lu Qingdi had been dealt with by him. What else dared others to say? Moreover, they had to hide the matter of Lu Qingdi for him. It was probably the first time in history that he had done this before becoming the emperor. Jingwan looked at the phoenix chariot in silence for a moment, and then calmly got on. However, because she was pregnant, the servants who served her were very careful, especially those who came from the palace. They really wanted to pounce on Jingwan and stand on her feet. Just like that. Jingwan looked at the long queue with limitless glory and unparalleled honor. Yuan was by her side. Although they had cleared the area in advance, they didn't see any ordinary people coming forward. However, there were no green curtains on both sides, so they could still see the crowd in the distance. At this moment, Jingwan seemed to have a real understanding of the words, motherly model of the world. Now her identity was different. After entering the palace, she naturally went directly to the Kuan-yi Palace. She didn't have to walk by herself. Along the way, all the people she saw knelt on the ground. She was really different. In the Great Qi Yuan dynasty, she was the most noble woman. It wasn't that Jingwan hadn't stepped into Kunyi Palace before, but it was mostly in the main hall. She had never set foot in other places. However, from now on, this place would belong to her for a long time. The front hall didn't change much. Although the layout of the bedroom was very different, there were still many familiar things. It was enough to show that the decorator had put in a lot of effort. Jingwan even saw an open book on the couch beside the bed. She read it last night, and even the number of pages was the same. It was necessary to adapt to a strange environment for the first time. Therefore Jingwan and Baishao, who were married, followed her into the palace. The only one who was absent was Fu Rong. Her mission, or rather her road of revenge, had begun. Jingwan, on the other hand, felt that there was no need to go to this extent. She was not made of paper. Moreover, she thought that she was quite adaptable. However, whether it was her husband or the people around her, she should not reject their good intentions. In fact, after a whole day, Jingwan didn't feel uncomfortable at all. When she was in the Wang mansion, she could find something to do, so she could do it here too. Whatever she did at that time, she could still do it now. It seemed like she had just changed her location. After all, she was now seriously ill and had not been conferred a title. She didn't need to take care of the palace affairs. The servants of the Kuan-yi Palace wanted to curry favor with her, but they were all stopped outside. Now Jingwan's wet nurse, the previous supervisor nanny, was naturally in charge of the personnel of the Kuan-yi Palace. She might not be very clear about the rules of the palace, but Nanny Gong was very clear about it. She had already reminded her before, so it was not difficult for her to learn it now. After a night's rest, Li Hongyuan was by her side, so she still slept well. People from the Ministry of Internal Affairs asked to see Jingwan. The Empress's conferring ceremony and the new Emperor's ascension ceremony were on the same day. Now there were only 20 days left. The dragon and phoenix robes had to be made in a hurry. However, they couldn't be careless at all. Those embroiderers had to work overtime. Jingwan certainly couldn't be approached by anyone now. However, it could be said that new clothes were being made every day around her. Therefore, people around her were very clear about her size. However, there were still 20 days left before the conferring ceremony. At that time, her body shape would definitely change. In order to wear the phoenix robe that was the most fitting, she definitely needed to be measured several times during this period to ensure that the final clothes would be the most fitting. Clothing was the most troublesome thing for a pregnant woman, especially in the later stages. It was normal for a woman's body to change from day to day. However, for someone in a high position, it was impossible for them to be like the average person. They couldn't afford to wear big and loose clothing from the start. They would only have a few pieces of clothing from start to finish. Especially now that Jingwan had Li Hongyuan, that crazy wife-doting devil. If she wanted to compromise, no one would agree. She would have new clothes that fit her every day. Of course, not only the phoenix robe, Jingwan's other clothes also needed to be made. There were rules for the phoenix robe, but other clothes could be made according to Jingwan's preferences. At this time, Jingwan had nothing to do, so she followed them to have a look. The people of the Imperial Household Department were naturally attentive and tried their best to please Jingwan. Of course, they also tried their best to learn about Jingwan's preferences. After seeing a lot, a palace servant came in and reported that Great Elder Princess wanted to see her. Jingwan hurriedly got up and went out to greet her. Not to mention that she hadn't been conferred the title yet. Even if she was conferred the title, Great Elder Princess was also her elder and her adoptive mother. Naturally, she wouldn't treat others as her adoptive mother. Seeing Jingwan come out and walk quickly, Great Elder Princess hurriedly walked up and said, "Why are you so reckless, child?" Although she reprimanded her, there was a hint of intimacy in her tone. "Didn't I miss you, adoptive mother?" Jingwan said with a smile. "You're about to be the mother of the country. Why are you still so childish?" Great Elder Princess held her and said with a smile. However, her body was cold, so she let go of her after holding her for a while. "Am I not your adoptive daughter as the mother of the country? Don't worry, adoptive mother. At other times, I'm still very dignified." Jingwan pretended to raise her arms. Great Elder Princess was amused by her, and the strange feeling in her heart faded a little. Deep down, she was still the same person. Jingwan wanted to hold Great Elder Princess's hand, but Great Elder Princess hurriedly stepped back and let her maid help her into the hall. The feeling inside the room was absolutely different from outside the room. Great Elder Princess's cloak couldn't be worn at all. After serving tea, snacks and dried fruits, Jingwan dismissed them. Great Elder Princess must have something to tell her since she came to see her at this time. Great Elder Princess saw it. She always knew that Jingwan was a thoughtful person, but there were some words that had to be said. She said it in a bold way for the sake of the Qi Yuan. During the whole process of fighting for the throne, Great Elder Princess stayed out of it. She even asked her son and the others to be idle people. No matter who tried to draw them to her side, she ignored them. In fact, her choice was not wrong. She used to be noble, and her status was still stable now. However, the person who would sit on the throne in the end was completely unexpected. She could only be miserably deceived like others. However, Great Elder Princess didn't care about this. For the sake of the throne, any means could be used. What Li Hongyuan did was his ability. Besides, Great Elder Princess didn't lose anything. On the contrary, as a princess, some of Li Hongyuan's decisions were actually beneficial to her. After all, in the past 2 days, as the people in the palace were arranged and dealt with one after another, some edicts had been issued one after another. Now not only her son, but even her husband might become an official. What could be more delightful than this? As for Li Hongyuan's handling of other things, she also got the news through her own channels. In other words, Li Hongyuan deliberately let those who were observant know. His ability was recognized and trusted, But Great Elder Princess was actually very worried about his temperament. What kind of temperament he showed in the past might be deliberately disguised, but Great Elder Princess had reason to believe that it was actually his true temperament most of the time. For an emperor, that kind of temperament was definitely not a good thing. From this point of view, Great Elder Princess felt that any of his brothers was more suitable for the throne than him. As a princess of the royal family, she naturally supported the royal family wholeheartedly and hoped that the Li family would pass on for generations to come. After taking 2 sips of tea, Great Elder Princess began to speak slowly. When I was young, because I was doted on by my father and mother, I did not stick to the small world of the palace. I often sneaked out of the palace and liked to make friends. In my life, I have seen many extraordinary women. They were either beautiful, intelligent, kind, or ambitious. However, there were a few that I admired. One of them was Empress Sunday. She did not lack intelligence, beauty, skill, or ambition. She did not hesitate to go against her mother's wishes, and became the first woman in the world to be the mother of the world. However, I did not like her very much because her ambition was a little too big. My brother and her only maintained the most basic relationship as husband and wife. Her only son was also not taught well and was estranged from her, just like Shangfeng and her subordinate. The relationship between her mother and her was also particularly stiff. In the end, she also ended up being abolished. Jingwan felt that Great Elder Princess might really admire Empress Sun, but she also seemed to mock Empress Sunday. It was very contradictory. However, it was beyond Jingwan's expectation that Great Elder Princess could see through Empress Sun so thoroughly. However, Jingwan probably knew what Great Elder Princess wanted to say, but it seemed that it had nothing to do with her. In addition, Imperial concubine, Su actually admired Empress Sunday. Even though there were countless beauties in the imperial harem every year, and there was no lack of talented and beautiful women, Empress Sun had always been the most favored one in the imperial harem for 20 or 30 years. Do you know why? Jingwan pondered for a moment. Maybe she knew the reason, but it seemed a little vague, so she shook her head. Because she knew my brother. Great Elder Princess sighed with emotion. She was the woman who knew my brother best in the world. Although she was not very likable, it couldn't be denied. Of course, her understanding might not be able to grasp it. As a matter of fact, she failed in the end. It was easy. Hearing this, Jingwan was touched. She didn't know what she thought of, but she was slightly lost in thought. Great Elder Princess said earnestly, "Emperors are also mortals. They have 7 emotions and 6 desires. They have personal preferences, love and hate. It's a great fortune to be loved by the emperor. It's also a great misfortune that you have to think carefully about every word and action. If you're not careful, you may follow your own preferences and emotions and influence the emperor's heart. It's not a big deal for trivial things, but it's a serious matter that will bring disaster to the country and people, be condemned by the public and leave a bad name for thousands of years. Since ancient times, all kinds of things have been common." Great Elder Princess said earnestly, "Emperors are also mortals. They have 7 emotions and 6 desires, personal preferences, love and hate. It's a great fortune to be loved by the emperor. It's also a great misfortune that you have to consider every word and action carefully." https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/161222778. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Mobile edition website, mbicken.com. Chapter 587. She knew that she had a great influence on him. If she was careless, she would really become a demoness who would bring disaster to the country. However, to be honest, Jingwan didn't feel heavy about this. Because if she felt heavy, then to some extent, it meant that Yuan's love for her had become heavy. She would always deny this. No matter how heavy the responsibility was, she would gladly endure it. However, Jingwan wouldn't say this out loud, because Great Elder Princess wouldn't understand that even though she and Prince Consort Jiang were a rare loving couple in the eyes of outsiders, and even in her own heart, in fact, there was a third party between them, and the third party had a child. In Jingwan's eyes, this was absolutely intolerable. Therefore, if you want to be a good woman of a ruler, you have to know him better than anyone else. You have to know his emotions and understand his thoughts. Besides, you have to remember one thing at all times. As a husband and a father in the future, he is a ruler first. And in the heart of a wise ruler, the people in the world are the first priority. Jingwan knew very well that her husband actually knew his position very well. He didn't need others to teach him what to do. His goal had never been to be famous for all the years. He thought that he could be a foolish, tyrannical, and wise ruler. Those who didn't know him would never know these things. Therefore, she really knew him best. Because Great Elder Princess cared about Qi Yuan, she hoped that Li Hongyuan could be a good emperor. Because he clearly had the ability. If he took a different road, it would make people sad and hateful. She hoped that Jingwan could be a rope that tied Li Hongyuan. When necessary, she could properly persuade him not to really follow his mood. In the past, he was capricious and rash, and what he caused was just a small splash. In the future, if he was capricious and rash, he might cause a storm that drowned Qi Yuan. Wan, Great Elder Princess looked at Jingwan seriously and asked, "Can you accommodate a ruler in your heart?" Jingwan was extraordinarily calm. She said with a smile, "Foster mother, I can accommodate a Yuan in my heart." Great Elder Princess frowned. She just wanted to remind Jingwan, and didn't want her answer. However, Jingwan gave the answer so easily and calmly. Obviously, she couldn't understand this answer very well. Even so, this answer didn't satisfy her. "Foster mother, don't worry. I know what to do. I also know what I'm doing." Great Elder Princess's eyebrows relaxed a little. "I always know that you are a good person." When there was a conflict between righteousness and personal feelings would still exist, but they might change a little. Jingwan was also very clear that Great Elder Princess's requirements for a princess and an empress must be very different. She might have been satisfied with her in all kinds of ways, and there was nothing bad about her. However, since it was confirmed that her husband would ascend the throne, she began to scrutinize her, and perhaps even criticize her a lot. However, according to Great Elder Princess's intelligence, she didn't know how to say these things. After all, even if Great Elder Princess came out of retirement, she was even less important than when Emperor Lu was still alive. Great Elder Princess's mansion used to rely on her, but in the future, it might rely on her husband, children and grandchildren. A brother's power was not as good as a father's, and a nephew's power was not as good as a brother's. Although she could still suppress others as an elder, it obviously didn't work on Li Hongyuan. He even punished his own father. If others dared to put on airs in front of him, they would be courting death. Because she could see clearly, she didn't even mention a word about Emperor Le. Everything was so simple. When Great Elder Princess left the palace, she met Wan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan, who were going out of the palace. Obviously, the two were still discussing something. It was not surprising that they met Great Elder Princess at this time. They looked at each other and walked up to her. "Greetings, Great Elder Princess." "Your Excellencies, you are too polite. I've been waiting here for Lord Luo." Great Elder Princess didn't beat around the bush. Wan Ruizhong was about to leave, but was stopped by Great Elder Princess. "Your Excellency, you can listen to us together." Thus, the two of them respectfully listened. "Just now, I went to the Central Palace and met with Jean Qinhuang Fei. I told her about the new emperor. As for what I said, you should know in your hearts. What kind of personality the new emperor has, we all know. I'm just worried. Even though I am Jean Qinhuang Fei's adoptive mother, there is still a layer separating us. So I hope that Luo Darren can—" "Great Elder Princess," Luo Peishan interrupted her timely. "Court officials are not allowed to interfere with the imperial harem, especially relatives of relatives. And the imperial harem is not allowed to interfere in politics." Great Elder Princess choked and her face changed. The rules said so, but few people took it seriously. However, when it was said on the surface, you couldn't clearly refute it. Great Elder Princess looked at Luo Peishan's elegant and gentle face. He was obviously an old fox. Great Elder Princess, although the new emperor hasn't ascended the throne yet, he handles things decisively and has his own rules. The new emperor cares about the people and has his own world. He will definitely be a wise emperor. Luo Peishan said meaningfully. Great Elder Princess was silent for a moment and sighed softly. In that case, there's nothing to worry about. In the end, he made a concession. If he said too much, he would bring trouble to himself. After all, the person who was going to sit on the throne was an adult, not a child. Anyone's doubts were undoubtedly a provocation. Great Elder Princess only dared to say a few words because of her status. If it were a minister who tried to do so, wouldn't he feel that his position was too stable? Too steady? And Great Elder Princess also had to stop. After Great Elder Princess left, Luo Peishan sighed. My granddaughter will probably be the most hard-working empress in history. In fact, Luo Peishan and Ruan Ruizhong knew what Jingwan was about to face. They had always regarded Jingwan as the rein that could tie Li Hongyuan, so that Li Hongyuan would not run wild. If Li Hongyuan was not restrained, it was really hard to predict what he would do. However, no one wanted to try. Not necessarily. If His Majesty really loves her, he won't let her work hard. He had a chance to stop himself, instead of the Empress pulling the rein with all her strength all the time. Lord Ruan, you seem to have never worried about it. That's because I believe in the girl taught by Lord Luo. Although I have little contact with Consort Jean, there are some things that I can see clearly. Luo Peishan smiled and did not say anything. He naturally believed in the child taught by his wife. Because he believed in her, he would not go to her and say something like Great Elder Princess, which was unnecessary. As the person who shared his bed, she should know more than anyone else. She had already thought about her position. It wasn't a day or two, but 2 or 3 years. This period of time might not be very long, but it was enough for a person to think about a matter. The two continued to move forward hand in hand, and there was no need to avoid anything. However, things may still be a little troublesome. What do you mean, Lord Ruan? Lord Luo, what do you think is the possibility of the harem not interfering in politics? Luo Peishan was silent for a moment, and then gave an answer. 0. Even if he did not take the initiative, the new emperor would probably send it in person. Moreover, Luo Peishan could feel that his granddaughter was actually very ambitious. It was fine that she did not sit on the throne, but since she had already sat on it, it was difficult for her to not do something. His Majesty will deal with the trouble. Yes, even if he was the emperor, he could not only create trouble. He had to deal with some troubles, and could not let them take all the blame. They, the officials, assisted the emperor to deal with the state affairs. They should not let the emperor deal with all the state affairs alone, and then they would have to deal with personal troubles for him. Then, when Luo Peishan went back, he encountered a little trouble, which came from Sun Yijia. It was about the death exemption gold medallion that she had long forgotten. At the beginning of the country, there were 4 dukes and 9 marquises, and there were 13 gold medallions. Each gold medallion could be used 3 times. Even if one committed treason, he could use this gold medallion to avoid the death penalty. The number of people who could be exempted from the death penalty varied from 1 to 9. If the crime did not warrant death, he could even be exempted from the crime of the whole family. The most important thing was that as long as the Qi Yuan was not destroyed, the gold medallion would always be effective. The power of this death exemption gold medallion was too great, and it left a lot of trouble for the future generations. The emperors after Taizu even used some sinister means to take back the 13 gold medallions one after another. There was only one chance left for the last gold medallion. Old Madame Sun took it from Duchess Ding to compensate Sun Yijia. This was originally a matter that no one knew, but this time, it may have been forced. Someone followed the clues and little by little, they actually found out that it was Sun Yijia. When she first got the death exemption gold medallion, Sun Yijia only thought that Jin Qinhuang was too hateful. No matter which prince ascended the throne, it would be unfavorable to him. Sun Yijia only wanted to give Jingwan a guarantee. Things changed later, until today's situation was not surprising. However, that gold medallion had long been forgotten. Now that it was remembered at this juncture, it did not seem to be a very surprising thing. Sun Yijia was somewhat tangled. She did not know how to deal with it. The gold medallion was of no use to Jingwan, but it was completely different in the hands of others. The key now was that her husband was the one in power. The rest of the people rebelled against their superiors. From Jingwan's point of view, they deserved it. From this point of view, she had no way to speak to Jingwan. However, Duke Ding's Fu in the end raised her up. It was fine if there was no way at all, but if there was a glimmer of opportunity, she still could not be indifferent. Although the final verdict had not been handed down, but when Prince Kong forced the abdication, her biological father was an absolute accomplice. Therefore, there was absolutely no possibility of escape. Now, with her father as the leader, the three clans were all in prison. Except for the married daughter, her bare brothers who returned to their hometown to observe mourning would soon be arrested and brought back to the capital. Sun Yijia could not make up her mind, so she went to find Madame Luo. It was about the time when she came back looking for Luo Peishan. Jingwa's wife, you should know that regardless of whether you want to take back the death-free gold medallion, Duke Ding's Fu is not something that can be protected by a death-free gold medallion. Sun Yijia sat upright, slightly lowered her head, and smiled bitterly. When grandmother gave me the gold medallion, she said the same thing. So when she insisted on giving it to me, I accepted it. It's just that. Are you mainly worried about your grandmother? Madame Luo asked. Sun Yijia nodded. In fact, Sun Yijia was not really indifferent when the people of Duke Ding's Fu were in prison. At least, she could not ignore her grandmother. However, even if her grandmother was in prison, it was not a big deal. That was why she could bluntly refuse others when they came to her door. Speaking of which, because she married into the Luo family was kind, so she was not affected. One must know that although the crime of a married daughter was not serious, because it involved rebellion, many people divorced those women in order to curry favor with the new emperor. Even if they were not divorced, their future life in their husband's family would definitely not be easy. Sun Yijia knew that she should be content, but her heart was made of flesh. How could she really have a heart of stone? Grandmother is already old, and can't bear the pain of being exiled. And my father, after all, gave birth to me. Your grandmother will not be on the list of people to be exiled. At that time, you can take her to the Luo family and settle her down. As for your father, it is absolutely impossible to save him. The new emperor is not like others. He is not a rule-abiding person. Let alone a gold medallion, even if it is 10 or 100 pieces, it is useless. Something like the gold medallion will only anger him. Even if he is forced by Taizu's decree to let you exercise the right of the gold medallion, he will find another way to execute your father. And I'm afraid that the number of people who will die will increase, and the involvement will increase. The people who will be affected will include you, including your children. You and the third girl are close, and your children are her nephews and nieces. Can she bear to see you suffer? At that time, pleading with the new emperor may cause their relationship to be at odds. Is this what you want to see? Luo Peishan explained softly to her. Luo Peishan seemed to have a good attitude, but these words all poked Sun Yijia's Achilles' heel. He was lenient, but his leniency towards Sun Yijia was not because of her, but because of his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-granddaughters. In some areas, he was not qualified to be a scholar official, but in some areas, he was definitely a scholar official. Except for his first wife, the other women who married into the Luo family were not completely part of the Luo family in his heart. When necessary, he could also give them up very happily. Madame Luo was very clear about this. In her eyes, compared to Jingwan, Sun Yijia was far inferior. Speaking of which, they still did not know what Sun Yijia did. If they knew, Sun Yijia would not even have the chance to sit here. Go back, don't think so much. Since your father made such a choice, then at the beginning, he should have thought about the consequences if he failed. When the matter is over, bring your grandmother here and properly settle her down. Take care of her until she is old, and it can be considered as filial piety for your father. Madame Luo said. When it was impossible to have the best of both worlds, this heart made of flesh would definitely be biased. It was obvious how Sun Yijia would choose. Moreover, She was not optimistic about Prince Kong since a long time ago. At that time, she had faintly thought that there might be a day like today. In fact, she had already made a decision in her heart. It was just that she could not let herself cut off the last link and needed someone else to do it. Now her heart seemed to be more relaxed. She was indeed a selfish person. Mocking herself in her heart, she stood up. Granddaughter-in-law will retire. After Sun Yijia left, Madame Luo took a sip of tea. In the end, Wanwan did not misjudge her. If this is disappointing, then she really doesn't know what's good for her. This matter was over. If someone came to find Sun Yijiao again, she did not deny it and bluntly said that the item was no longer in her hands. At that time, it was brought to Jin Qinhuang Fei to add to her dowry. Thus, that item was most likely in the hands of the new emperor. Something like the death exemption gold medallion was of great importance. Who knew how many people wanted it? Sun Yijia could not hide it completely. Moreover, that item was special and could not be dissolved privately. Thus, it was best to tell the truth. It could be dug out by anyone. In the hands of the new emperor, Sun Yijia was naturally scolded again. Brainless, stupid, of course old Madame Sun, who gave the item to Sun Yijia, would definitely be angered. At a time of life and death, naturally, no one would care about her identity. Those sisters-in-law, daughters-in-law, granddaughters-in-law, niece-in-law, and so on, who were also locked in prison, all scolded her. However, probably because they expected this kind of situation, Luo family arranged a separate place for old Madame Sunday. Thus, they could only scold her. And all of this had no effect on old Madame Sunday. Even if Xiao sorrowful cried, she was still indifferent. In terms of ruthlessness, she was also one of the top. She could drug her own daughter and watch her own son die. As the saying goes, true harm came from the people she cared about. What could the people she did not care about do to her? No one knew better than her about the decline of Duke Dinggua's residence. If she really wanted to save it, she would not have closed her door to abstain from meat and pray to Buddha. She would not have ignored everything, and she would not have given something like the death exemption golden medallion to Sun Yijia. Therefore, she was calmer than anyone else in the prison cell. The commotion caused by this matter was not small. For a time, it even caused a small storm. Some people did not give up. They did not believe that Sun Yijia would be so stupid as to give such a precious item to someone else. They tried every means to dig it out. However, the current Luo family was not the same as before. In the past, when Luo Peishan was in charge, they did not dare to be presumptuous, let alone now. Li Hongyuan did not hold a court, but he held a small court meeting. All the officials who were supposed to be present were present. He directly threw the death exemption golden medallion out, and it fell to the ground with a bang. He was disrespectful to his father, and he also did not care about his ancestors. It also clearly showed the court officials that a broken medallion could not be of any use to him. Whoever wants it, feel free to take it, Li Hongyuan said in a light tone. His subordinates all kept quiet out of fear. Even the imperial censor did not dare to say anything about Li Hongyuan's disrespect to his ancestors. As for Li Hongyuan's faults, they had all disappeared into the ocean. 2 days ago, there was one courageous official who had sent a memorial to remonstrate with him. In the end, Li Hongyuan had ordered people to turn his background upside down. Li Hongyuan then casually retorted with a few words, causing him to almost die on the spot as an apology. Li Hongyuan did not take off his official status, but the effect of killing the chicken to warn the monkey was quite obvious. After a few days, they had basically understood that it was best for them to not nitpick on Li Hongyuan and do their own business. Even if it was a matter of national importance, if he directly ordered them to do so, it was best for them not to open their mouths if he did not ask. It was true that he was a dictator. However, even if he was a dictator, there were still no decisions that people felt were wrong. February 2nd, the dragon raised its head. The new emperor ascended the throne, and the empress was conferred. Li Hongyuan's ascension ceremony came first, and Jingwan's conferment of the empress came later. The dragon and phoenix robes had already been sent over. Jingwan dragged her heavy body and helped Li Hongyuan change his clothes. Because it was a special occasion, she wanted to do it herself. Li Hongyuan did not stop her. He only quietly looked down at her beautiful face and waited for her to button the last button on her collar. Your Majesty's appearance is unparalleled. Li Hongyuan gently held her hand. My wife's beauty is unparalleled since ancient times. This kind of praise, even Jingwan's current face couldn't help but burn a little. However, her praise for him came from the bottom of her heart and should be recognized. His feelings for her were probably more like beauty in the eye of the beholder. At this special time, Jingwan's face was red, but she also accepted it with a smile. Jingwan helped Li Hongyuan change his clothes. At this moment, Li Hongyuan also returned the courtesy. Jingwan's eyes flashed, but she didn't refuse. Zhongyi was the most ceremonious of the 3Ds. It could be said to be a phoenix robe. Her ornaments were decorated with flowers of 12 trees, and her hair was both broad and broad. Her clothes were made of dark green, and her inscriptions were in the shape of a zhai. Cyan muslin in the middle, zhai collar, luoho in the middle, zhai as the seal, zhai as the third class. The large belt followed the color of the clothes, vermilion, and the outside, vermilion brocade on top, green brocade on bottom. New York used the green group, and the leather belt used the green clothes. The white jade double pendants, the black group, 2 large ribbons, 3 small 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 ribbons, and 3 small ribbons. Accepting the imperial register, assisting in the sacrificial offering, and attending court meetings, all other important matters would be handled by him. There were countless women in the imperial harem. Those who entered the imperial harem did everything they could to ensure that their clothes did not fall into the hands of others. As for the rest, they did everything they could to win the imperial harem, all for the sake of the imperial harem. Jingwan stood in front of the glass mirror and looked at the woman in the phoenix robe. Although her belly was difficult to hide, she still had a noble aura. She couldn't help but feel a trace of emotion in her heart. She was so lucky to have the emperor's love. She didn't have to fight with any other woman. She could wear this set of clothes and become the mother of the world. Today was her 18th birthday. She had been in this world for 18 years. According to her previous life, this was the day she came of age. The man she loved who loved her had given her an unparalleled birthday gift. Supreme honor, equal honor. She sighed and felt sweet in her heart. At the same time, she was ready to accept the responsibility. He loved her without regrets, and she would never leave him. She was not afraid of any challenges. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/1613928 HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Com Mobile Edition. Chapter 588. No one was more suitable than her, and she was the only suitable person. Jingwan turned around and looked at Li Hongyuan with a smile. She leaned sideways, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him on the lips. You didn't eat honey today. But as long as Wanwan is by my side, I feel as if I'm eating honey all the time. If my heart is sweet, it's natural that I feel sweet everywhere. Li Hongyuan wantonly displayed his sweet and charming aura. His skill of speaking sweet words had been maxed out and had evolved to the master level. Although Jingwan was basically immune to it, few people didn't like to hear nice words. If she felt sweet, wouldn't it be good for the baby in her belly? Back in the prince's residence, the servants who served Jingwan were used to this kind of scene. No matter how thin-skinned they were, they didn't react. However, the servants of Ikuan Palace weren't so experienced. Although this wasn't the first time they had seen such a scene, they still couldn't help blushing. A few of the palace maids couldn't help sneaking glances at Li Hongyuan. There was nothing they could do about it. He was the emperor and was born with unparalleled good looks. Moreover, he looked so gentle and affectionate. It was normal for love to sprout in their hearts. Obviously, they had thrown some rumors beyond the clouds. Perhaps they believed that seeing was believing and hearsay was false. The emperor had nothing to do with the person in the rumors. Naturally, there were people who saw the thoughts of these people. They only felt that these little girls were really very naive. Whether it was pure love or wild ambition, they never knew that the new emperor gave all his gentleness to one person. If anyone else wanted to covet and try to get a share of it, they would definitely be faced with the cruelty of regretting that they were born in this world. Your Majesty, the auspicious hour is coming. Eunuch Mu, who had been promoted to the chief eunuch of the internal court, said respectfully at the door. Li Hongyuan didn't even look at him, and he didn't mean to leave at all. He didn't move, and Eunuch Mu didn't dare to urge him. He stood there respectfully. Jingwan looked at him. What was he going to throw a tantrum again? Why aren't you going? She reached out and pushed him. Come with me. Li Hongyuan held her hand. You're the one ascending to the throne, so why should I interfere? The agenda of the ascension ceremony has already been arranged. If I were to meddle in it for no reason, it would be like drawing a line on a perfect painting. How annoying would that be? In fact, Jingwan actually wanted to go and take a look. She wanted to personally witness one of the most majestic moments in his life. Unfortunately, it was not allowed. Let's see who dares. He was the best example of a dictator. I'm the one who doesn't like it, alright? What's more, my body is heavy now, and there's still the conferring ceremony later. Can you bear to see me suffer so much? You. Li Hongyuan pinched her face. How could he not know her true purpose? Then wait for me. Okay. Jingwan nodded. Li Hongyuan didn't want to drag things out when he decided to leave. Previously, he had already sent officials from the Ministry of Rites to pray to heaven, earth, and ancestral society. Logically speaking, it was more appropriate for Li Hongyuan to do it himself. The previous emperors of the Qi Yuan were all like this. However, if one looked back at history, it wasn't necessarily so. When Li Hongyuan made the decision, not only did the officials not object, they even found excuses for him. Because Emperor Licheng was still living well, Li Hongyuan didn't need to wear mourning clothes. He was dressed in a luxurious and complicated crown. At this moment, he no longer concealed his aura. The auspicious time had arrived, and he walked step by step up to the Fengtian gate. He had the bearing of the Son of Heaven, the prestige of an emperor. What was the meaning of a sovereign descending to the world? He was it. When Li Hongyuan was praying to heaven and earth, the civil and military officials were led into the palace. They stood in the officialdom outside the Fengtian Hall, and knelt in 2 rows on the east and west side of the Imperial Road. When Li Hongyuan finished praying, he came down from the Fengtian gate and entered the Fengtian Hall. The drums sounded, and the people in the hall took their positions. The courtiers tidied their robes and entered according to their official rank. The black-clothed guards cracked their whips, the generals rolled up the curtains, and the master of ceremonies shouted salutes. During this time, there was a burst of ceremonial music. When the civil and military officials shouted, "Long live the emperor" 3 times, the musicians shouted in unison. Their voices resounded throughout the hall. On the throne, Li Hongyuan was very calm. He had experienced this once in his previous life. At that time, his state of mind was different from now. At that time, he was in a state of madness that he didn't even know about. The same thing was that he didn't feel the excitement of ruling the world. Finally, it was the imperial edict. The imperial edict went from inside to outside the Meridian Gate, and then to the Fengtian Hall. At this point, it was announced to the world that the new emperor had ascended the throne. His name was Yuanqi, and this was the first year of Yuanqi. This era name was set by Li Hongyuan himself. To a certain extent, it was simply too conceited. At this time, it was the empress's coronation ceremony. Because of Jingwan's special situation, some of the complicated agenda was basically omitted. However, there was not a trace of the dignity that should have been there. Previously, when Li Hongyuan ascended the throne, the officials had already brought the empress's coronation in when they prayed to heaven, earth, and the ancestral temple. This step was directly omitted, and because it was being held in the Fengtian Hall, the ceremonial servants should have set up a treasure table and other necessary things in front of the throne the day before. Now they could only quickly remove the things that were originally used for the coronation ceremony and replace them. Li Hongyuan had already left the Fengtian Hall with the officials. Compared to the coronation ceremony, Li Hongyuan seemed to be more interested in Jingwan's coronation ceremony. The moment he stood up from the throne, his expression was even more solemn and dignified. Armored guards and palace ceremonial attendants lined up on both sides of the palace door. The palace played ceremonial music. The incense table and other necessary items were set up for the coronation ceremony. There were singing and dancing artists set up on both sides of the palace door. Everything was ready. The Empress coronation master rang the drum 3 times. The officials and Li Hongyuan entered the Fengtian Hall. The officials of the Ministry of Rites presented Li Hongyuan's coronation ceremony book and the Empress's seal on the table prepared in advance. The officials stood in their previous positions in their respective halls. Then, the music started. The Emperor and ministers bowed 4 times. After the officials stood up, the music stopped. The ceremonial servant stepped forward. "Emperor, may we begin the Empress's coronation ceremony?" Li Hongyuan raised his hand. "Allow." The ceremonial servant walked out from the middle door. He walked down the steps and reached the position where the decree was to be read out. The official read out the decree. "Luo is conferred the title of Empress. You are ordered to carry out the ceremony." The official and the deputy knelt down. They stood up. The ceremonial servant entered the hall from the west door. The deacon raised the book and the treasure table. After several ceremonies, the book and the seal were returned to the table. At this time, the ceremonial music was played. The official and the deputy knelt 4 times. They stood up. The music stopped. The ceremonial music sounded again. The ceremonial servant led the way. The ceremonial servant followed closely behind. After leaving the Fengtian Hall, the music stopped. The ceremonial servant shouted, "The ceremony is over." Li Hongyuan stood up. The officials retreated. The ceremonial servant sealed the decree. The ceremonial servant stood beside the dragon pavilion where the books were stored. The ceremonial servant and the ceremonial servant led the way. Outside the central palace, the music started. Although Jingwan didn't participate in the whole process, there were people who reported the details to her. Sitting in the hall, Jingwan's thoughts drifted. It seemed like she was thinking a lot, but it also seemed like she wasn't thinking about anything. Nyang, the emperor came with the ceremonial servant. When Jingwan heard this, she came back to her senses. He shouldn't have come in person, but he wanted to personally confer the title for her. Her gaze landed on the 9 dragons and 4 phoenixes crown. It looked exquisite and heavy. Even though she was prepared, she still felt a little strange when she saw it. She still couldn't pinpoint the exact reason. "Nanny, help me put it on." When Mama Gong heard this, she quickly and carefully put it on for Jingwan. The emperor is right. No one is more suitable for this dress than Yang, she sincerely praised. Jingwan smiled and didn't say much. It was hard to say, but this phoenix's crown was really heavy. Mama Gong helped Jingwan stand up and walked out of the Kuan-yi Palace. The imperial palace was located in the south and faced the north. All the main halls were like this. Jingwan stood in the main hall facing the south. At this time, in front of the Kuan-yi Palace, everything was prepared. Li Hongyuan didn't come in a carriage. Hundreds of officials accompanied him. The rest of the people were on the side. It was vast and mighty, showing the majesty and nobility of the imperial family. When they arrived, the music stopped. Everyone respectfully welcomed the emperor. Then Jingwan followed the agenda and was led out of the hall. She met Li Hongyuan's eyes. Li Hongyuan's originally stern face completely softened at this moment. The MC led the attendants to their positions. Originally, the treasured book and the treasured seal should have been handed over to the inner emissary by the head emissary and the vice emissary respectively, and then handed over to the eunuchs by Jingwan's side. However, Li Hongyuan changed this. The head envoy led Jingwan down the steps and stood in the center of the courtyard, right in front of Li Hongyuan. The head envoy said, "There are rules." Jingwan should have knelt down, but Li Hongyuan reached out to help her. Some things were self-evident. The others also pretended not to see it. Anyway, the emperor had done what he shouldn't do, so he didn't care about it. The music started. Jingwan stood up after 4 kowtows, and the music stopped. After the announcement, The treasured book was handed over to the eunuch to read aloud. Then the treasured book fell into the hands of Li Hongyuan, who personally handed it over to Jingwan. Jingwan should have knelt down to receive it, but she also stood up. Then she handed it over to the eunuch beside her. The process of handing over the treasured seal was the same. From the beginning to the end, Jingwan was smiling. There were so many people around, but she seemed to only have eyes for Li Hongyuan, and Li Hongyuan was the same. However, she still restrained herself. Even if she didn't put the others in her eyes, she didn't do anything inappropriate to provoke them. The MC said, "The ceremony is over." Jingwan stood up and bowed again. At this point, the Empress's coronation ceremony was over. Originally, at the end, Li Hongyuan needed to bring Jingwan to the first offering hall to pay respects to the ancestors. However, Li Hongyuan was obviously not interested in this. However, the civil and military officials were all present, and there were so many people in the inner court. Jingwan used her sleeves to cover it up, and smiled as she pulled Li Hongyuan's sleeves. "You've done so many things, and the officials are all backing you up. When it comes to the people of the world, you should at least give them some face and not be too ruthless." Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan, and in the end, he chose to compromise. The officials saw this and were more or less comforted. Finally, when they returned to the first offering hall, Jingwan bowed 8 times to Li Hongyuan, who was sitting on the throne. Li Hongyuan came down, personally helped her up, and led her to the throne. Inside and outside the first offering hall, civil and military officials, musicians, and military school. Long live the 5 emperors, long live the Empress, long live the Empress, long live the Empress. The cheers resounded throughout the world. After the ceremony ended, Li Hongyuan ordered a banquet to be held. He invited the civil and military officials, many madams, and members of the imperial family to a banquet. Because the banquet was exceptionally grand, it took up a lot of space, and there were several halls connected. Before the banquet, imperial edicts were issued one after another, such as amnesty for the world, conferring Qin Shufei the title of Grand Imperial Concubine, bestowing Ci and palace with the honor of being the Empress Dowager, and conferring titles to Li Hongyuan's brothers. Of course, they only received one imperial edict. Then there were the officials who supported him in his ascension. Of course, these people might not be promoted, but they would still receive some basic rewards. As for the rest, he would talk about it later. When encountering someone like Li Hongyuan, there was no need to think about anything more. It was better to be honest. He would not be stingy with what was rightfully yours, but no one could ask him for it. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan shared the throne, and there was no extra seat next to the throne. The emperor's love for the empress reached a new level in everyone's hearts. The banquet lasted from noon to night. It was rare that there was no fighting and scheming. Even if some people were feeling depressed, they could only hold it in. The next day, Jingwan gave a verbal order to summon the elders of her maternal family. No one knew what was said. The next day, Jingwan gave another verbal order to summon her sister-in-law, her married sisters, and her close friends before marriage. Jingwan's current status was completely different. Before Li Hongyuan's matter was exposed, how many people would have expected this? In the past, many people did not take Jingwan seriously. Even if they respected her, it was because they were afraid of the living hell. Even in the morning, many people were waiting to see her make a fool of herself. They wanted to see how long she could live, and when she would die. In the end, there were still many people who could not come back to their senses. Jingwan sat in the highest position, and all the people who were closely related to her rose with the tide. Not to mention the Luo family, the aunts and sisters who had married out had the Luo family as their backing, so their backs were not soft. Now they could not be any tougher. Their husbands' families, regardless of whether they were satisfied with them or not, were now flattering and coaxing them. Not only did they not give their husbands women, but they also repeatedly warned them to be good to their wives and not to fool around outside. Naturally, Yuan Qiaoqiao and Zhou Shuang also received the same treatment. They sighed countless times. Jingwan, little sister Wan, actually became the empress? It seemed like a dream. Because of her first child, Zhou Shuang's life was not good. But now, she was the empress, and the family really wanted to worship her. When she gave birth, Jingwan was just a princess consort with no future, but she supported Zhou Shuang. Now needless to say, it was needless to say. So they hoped that Zhou Shuang could put in a good word for Jingwan and help the family. So when Zhou Shuang wanted to enter the palace, they were more enthusiastic than anyone else. Some people wanted them to bring their sisters into the palace, but they all refused firmly. The empress only said that she wanted to see her daughter-in-law. If I bring my aunt into the palace, the empress might think that I don't know when to stop and hate me. I believe that is not what everyone wants to see. What else could they say? They could only give up. They were quite restrained at first, but when they saw Jingwan was still the same as before, they gradually relaxed. Because of the difference in status, they could no longer hold hands and whisper in each other's ears, and it was inconvenient for them to say many intimate words. However, the atmosphere was still relatively relaxed. Jingwan left Sun Yijia to the end and said a few words alone. Originally, because of Sun Yilin, her relationship with Sun Yijia was not pure. However, when she saw that Sun Yijia was calm and restrained now, she knew that the matter of Ding general manner had affected her. However, she still looked the same. Jingwan could not vent her anger on her, because of Sun Yilin. Of course, she was not going to tell her about Sun Yilin's matter. Sister-in-law, about the matter of Ding general manner. 1. Your Highness, you don't need to say anything. I know that they deserved it. In fact, I have to thank your Highness. Jingwan sighed softly. How about you, sister-in-law? How are you? Thank you for your concern, Your Highness the Empress. This subject's wife is doing quite well. Back then, I was disfigured but still managed to marry a good husband. I don't know how many people were envious and jealous of me. Now, I have a son and a daughter, and there is no one else by my husband's side. There is also you, my younger aunt, who is the motherly model of the world. When I go out, 9 out of 10 people will say that my life is too good. Especially those who once ridiculed me. Their tone is full of hidden bitterness. You have to know that when I see those people feeling uncomfortable, my heart will feel better. So let's wait 20 years to see what kind of person he is. It doesn't need 20 years. I can slap them back now. I believe that I can continue to slap them. Both Your Highness and I can. Jingwan nodded with a smile. She was right. Digression. The main text would be finished tomorrow. She was going to finish it today, but there was a power outage. Jingwan gives birth, and Li Hongyuan overcomes the last inner demon tribulation. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/16170621. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 589. After Jingwan sent them away, she was free again. After all, Li Hongyuan had just ascended the throne and had many things to do. He didn't have much time to accompany Jingwan. Jingwan didn't need him to be by her side all the time. If he stayed in the palace for a lifetime, he would definitely dislike it for being too small. However, for Jingwan, the current palace was still fresh enough. There were many places for her to explore. Except for the palace servants who were sweeping, the other palaces were basically empty. Counting with her fingers, it seemed that there were only a few masters in the entire palace. She counted with one hand, but there were still more than 5 masters. Suddenly, she felt that the palace seemed to be boundless. So there were so many concubines in the harem, which was still useful. For example, it made the palace look less empty. As long as there were benefits, Jingwan would never let them in. Even if all the houses were demolished, they wouldn't be able to live in them. Well, such a crazy idea was just a thought. She wouldn't really put it into action. However, these unoccupied houses were more prone to decay. Every year, the amount of money spent on maintenance would probably increase by a large amount. However, with more people in the palace, the amount of money spent would only increase. All aspects of clothing, food, housing, and transportation would definitely be an astronomical figure. So, it was better to leave it empty. Well, Jingwan was a good empress who was good at running a household. The palace was far bigger than the prince's mansion. Not to mention other places, just the imperial garden alone was enough for Jingwan to play for a long time. However, now was not a good time to dig the ground. But she would walk around from time to time. There were some things that she could write down and slowly transform when the time came. Because the palace was big enough, Jingwan also had many places to walk. After careful calculation, there was about a week before the child in her belly was 8 months old. However, according to the calculation in her previous life, the child was born from the last period. So the child was about 34 weeks old. The whole pregnancy cycle was 40 weeks plus or minus 2. But usually, there was no problem after 36 weeks. Jingwan estimated her own situation and knew clearly the date of pregnancy. She might go after 40 weeks, so there was nothing to worry about. She was the only master in the harem, and she was pregnant. The child might be the emperor's eldest son, the future emperor. Because Jingwan was very precious now, everyone revolved around her. They knew that Jingwan was not like the previous concubines who were basically holed up in their own places when they were pregnant. Jingwan went out almost every day, so every place was clean to ensure that no accidents would happen. According to the emperor's love for the empress, if something went wrong, there would be a river of blood. Just like when she was pregnant at the beginning, people around her were nervous, but Jingwan herself was extraordinarily calm. The days passed so leisurely. Jingwan, like Li Hongyuan's expectation, gained some weight, but it was still not obvious. The former Qin Shufei, now old concubine Qin, came to the Kunyi palace from time to time to see Jingwan. Jingwan often went to her place. Old concubine Qin was a peaceful person. Although they were at different ages, they got along well with each other. In fact, Jingwan actually thought about letting old concubine Qin go out of the palace. In some cases, she was very lonely in the palace and had no children. If she had children, she could take them out and raise them. Lu Qingdi's concubines who had sons were basically like this. Speaking of it, this should be the best ending for the concubines who didn't become the Empress Dowager after the emperor's husband died, and didn't get the honor. Old concubine Qin refused. She had been used to it in the palace. Now there was no intrigue, so she lived a very comfortable life. Besides, someone wants to stay in the palace. Jingwan immediately understood that old concubine Qin was referring to the imperial noble consort. It was understandable that she wanted to stay close to her son. If she was still alive, she would be the Empress Dowager now. Of course, she would still be posthumously conferred the title of Empress Dowager. As for why she was not the empress, it was actually the imperial noble consort's intention through old concubine Qin. According to the imperial noble consort, she didn't want the title of Empress Dowager. She didn't want to have a closer relationship with Lu Qingdi. However, it was normal for the new emperor to posthumously confer the title of Empress Dowager. It was filial piety. Li Hongyuan was extremely unfilial to his father, so he had to do something else to stop people from gossiping. Li Hongyuan didn't care, but the imperial noble consort had to care. She also made it clear that after Lu Qingdi's death, her body would be moved out of the imperial mausoleum and buried again. After the initial busy time, the big shots of the cabinet and the 6 ministries were all filled. Li Hongyuan had more free time. Because of the great improvement of the memorials, it seemed that it would be finished quickly. In addition, unlike his father, Li Hongyuan left most of the things to the cabinet and the 6 ministries to deal with. He only needed the general things. However, don't think that you could fool him like this. If you really had such thoughts, your head would not be far away from moving. Yuan Ruizhong was a man of his words. Not long after, he submitted a memorial to retire. However, he was ruthlessly rejected by Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan's character was there. He was a man of his words. If he rejected it, it was not hypocritical to persuade him to stay. Unless you have one foot in the coffin, don't submit a memorial to go against him. Li Hongyuan said at the beginning that he would keep Yuan Ruizhong and completely squeeze out the remaining value. How could he let him go at this time? When he was no longer useful, he could pack up his things and get out. Those who didn't know would only think that Li Hongyuan was a rare wise ruler in this aspect. Only those who were involved in it would know how bitter it was. Luo Peishan patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. Old man, forget it. He is the emperor now. He is the boss. Everything is decided by him. No matter how capable you are, there is nothing you can do. Ruan Ruizhong looked at Luo Peishan, who was in a good mood. His face was dark. You old fox, don't think that I don't know what you are thinking. With the empress here, you can leave at any time. You are very proud, right? Luo Peishan was indeed very proud now. In the whole capital, no matter whether it was a noble or an aristocratic family, who could compare with the glory of the Luo family? However, Luo Peishan was very sensible. He restrained his family, and became more low-key than before. He was more diligent and cautious in doing things. It was not easy for others to take advantage of him. With more free time, he naturally had more time to accompany Jingwan. As a result, old concubine Qin came to see Jingwan less. Jingwan realized belatedly that it should be her husband's idea that old concubine Qin came to accompany her at any time. In the second half of February, Li Hongyuan basically stayed with him at all times. Originally, he set a rule that there would be a court session every 5 days. He did not care about whether it was a court session or a court session, except for the time during the morning court session. He even brought the memorials back to Kunyi Palace. Li Hongyuan was still so gentle to Jingwan that she had nothing to say. He was absolutely obedient. He hid himself very well, but Jingwan still inadvertently found his anxiety. It was said that pregnant people were easy to have prenatal anxiety. She didn't, but her husband did. However, Jingwan couldn't help laughing. She couldn't even tease him. Because she knew why he was like this, she was full of heartache. However, she tried her best to adjust her mood. She was in a good mood because she knew that only when she was well could he be well. If she was affected by him and became bad, it would be really bad. In March, Gong Jiu directly lived in the Kunyi Palace. As for the rules, they were all nonsense in Li Hongyuan's place. Li Hongyuan's bad mood was especially obvious to the courtiers. As long as a small matter was not handled well, he would be furious. Even Luo Peishan and Ruan Ruizhong trembled a little. However, they almost knew the reason. Because Luo Laoforan and Jingwan's mother were summoned to the palace by Li Hongyuan. It was normal for a woman to have a child. Although it was worrying, it was rare to be worried to the extent that the emperor was worried. The emperor was deeply in love with the empress. Every time people thought that he had reached the extreme, he would always tell you that it was not enough. The former Jin Qinhuang was a playboy. Now Emperor Yuanqi was a completely infatuated type. To be able to tie him to this point, the empress was also a capable person. The 12th of March was Li Hongyuan's birthday. In the past, it was completely ignored because of Luqingdi. Now it was the birthday of the emperor. Naturally, it could not be ignored. But until now, there was still no news. It was enough to see that the birthday of the Qi Yuan year would not be held. However, it was not good to give up on the birthday of the first year, right? When it was close, someone still mentioned it. In the end, they were almost cut off by Li Hongyuan. At this point, no one dared to say a word. Luo Laoforan and Zhang Shi were naturally happy that they could enter the palace to accompany Jingwan at this time. However, they also clearly felt that Li Hongyuan was too nervous. When they said this to Jingwan, Jingwan was also very helpless. However, there were some things that could not be explained. Jingwan found that Li Hongyuan's eyes were bloodshot. This meant that he had not really closed his eyes for at least 3 days. However, at night, he was clearly by her side, but she did not notice at all. How could Jingwan not know that the day was getting closer and closer? In any case, Jingwan could no longer pretend that she did not know. She hugged him in a more uncomfortable position and pressed her forehead against his. Yuan, I will be fine. Really? Li Hongyuan turned her cumbersome body sideways and hugged her from behind. One of his hands landed on her stomach. At this time he did not hide anything. I shouldn't have let you be pregnant with him. I shouldn't have. Li Hongyuan once thought that at that time, his brain must have been damaged to do such a thing. Yuan, don't be like this. Jingwan did not know how to comfort him. In fact, what he really cared about was her death. The child was only part of the reason. If she was fated to have such a calamity, even if she did not get pregnant, it could be because of other reasons. He would still be in a constant state of panic. He might even become more nervous because he did not know the reason. On the 8th day of the 3rd month, even Master Liaochen entered the capital and entered the palace. That night, Li Hongyuan met with Master Liaochen. He no longer concealed his terrifying aura. "Master, tell me, Wanwan will be fine, right?" "Ba. Your Majesty, this humble monk is telling you this right now. Will you listen?" Li Hongyuan clenched his fists. That's right, he would not listen. No matter what others said, he would not listen. Unless Jingwan was truly fine and could make it through these 2 days. "Master, if anything happens to Wanwan, you know what we will do." He stood up. However, he could not control his aura. He could not see Jingwan. It would affect her. Ba, Master Liaochen chanted. Li Hongyuan stood outside. The stars in the sky were not bad. He did not know how long he had been standing there. Your Majesty, Your Highness." Li Hongyuan did not even wait for the palace maid to finish speaking. He turned and rushed inside. Jingwan was having an attack. When she was still a few days away, she had been eating and drinking well. But now, she was having an attack. This day really matched Li Hongyuan's past life. The terror of that moment almost suffocated him. Li Hongyuan personally carried Jingwan to the delivery room, which was the warm room of Kunyi Palace. In a short time, the entire Kunyi Palace was bustling with activity. It was brightly lit inside and outside. Not to mention Madame Luo and the others. Even Grand Concubine Qin rushed over as quickly as possible. 8 midwives had been prepared. The imperial physicians were also brought over at the first moment. Jingwan did not expect the attack to happen so early. At this moment, she also wondered if she was going to have a misfortune. However, she did not panic. She smiled at Li Hongyuan. "It's just started. It's still early. You'll give birth soon. I'll be with you." Jingwan looked at him silently. Okay. In the end, there was no way to drive him out. Whether he was with her or not, as long as she was not safe, he would suffer in his heart. The midwives next to him wanted to say something, but they were stopped by Nanny Gong's sharp eyes. It reminded them that they only needed to help the Empress give birth to the child smoothly. As for the rest, they should keep their mouths shut and not say a word. "I'm hungry. I want to eat." Jingwan rubbed against Li Hongyuan and said coquettishly. "Okay, get someone to prepare it right away." In fact, there was no need for Li Hongyuan to order. It had already been prepared. Now it was just labor pain, and it was not obvious. Jingwan could still endure it. However, when it came to eating, Li Hongyuan took care of it. As time passed, the labor pain became more and more obvious, and the frequency became higher and higher. Jingwan tried her best to endure it. She even smiled and talked to Li Hongyuan, but the smile became more and more forced. "Yuan, don't be afraid. I'll be fine. We'll grow old hand in hand." The sun in March was already high in the sky, but there was still not much movement in the warm room of the Kunyi Palace. However, in the long corridor outside the door, there were palace maids and eunuchs kneeling on the ground. A group of imperial physicians in blue clothes and green leather waited outside the door. Without an order, they didn't even dare to move. Their bodies were stiff. Several palace maids in green onion shirts and jujube dresses were busy carrying hot water and tea trays. They were all sweating profusely. The Empress had a difficult birth. It was said that her pelvis was a little small. Li Hongyuan was inside, and Madame Luo and the others were outside. They were restless and anxious. In the end, they couldn't sit still, and went straight into the delivery room. They were still dazzled by the person sitting at Jingwan's bedside. Li Hongyuan didn't say anything. He grabbed Jingwan's hand tightly, and his face was as dark as water. In fact, he didn't need to say anything. The people in the room knew that if anything happened to Jingwan, they would all be buried with her. Jingwan's intermittent cries of pain could be heard. Occasionally, there was the sound of the midwife's comforting voice. Even though they were separated by the curtains, the people outside felt their scalps tingle. Jingwan was sweating profusely on the Arhut couch. She was only wearing a loose robe. Her body was drenched in sweat, as if she had just been fished out of the water. Yuan. Jingwan called out weakly. Here, Wan, I'm here. Li Hongyuan paused for a moment before responding. His entire body was stiff. Nurse Gong used a clean handkerchief to wipe the sweat off her face. She then brought the ginseng tea and used a small spoon to feed her a few mouthfuls. Jingwan's eyes drifted for a moment. Another wave of pain came, but she gritted her teeth and endured it. Because he was here, Jingwan didn't feel that the pain was terrible. Nyang, if you're in pain, just shout. Don't hold it in. Come, this servant will count for you. If you push down, you'll come out soon. A midwife knelt at the end of the bed and advised her while helping her give birth naturally. Jingwan knew that this child wouldn't be born so easily. She had been very careful about her diet. She was afraid that the child would be too big and difficult to give birth. She didn't expect that her pelvis was small. Why didn't anyone tell her this? Yuan. Wan, tell me. Let Gongjiu come in and take the child out. Li Hongyuan's pupils shrank. His other hand was clenched so tightly that it made cracking sounds. After a while he loosened his grip. Okay. Someone let Gongjiu come in. Madame Luo and the others watched anxiously. When they heard this, they didn't quite understand what was going on. It was not good to let a man come in at this time. The Empress's reputation was not only related to the Emperor, but since the Emperor himself had agreed, he wouldn't hurt Jingwan. Gongjiu was actually prepared. He even brought 2 female doctors with him. However, he hoped that he didn't need to do anything, but now. However, at this time there was nothing to say. Instead, he tried his best to calm down and do everything he could to ensure the safety of the Empress and the child. Otherwise, he really didn't dare to imagine what would happen. Yuan, go out, don't stand guard, go out. He could stand guard before, but Jingwan didn't want him to be there for the next scene. Li Hongyuan lowered his head and looked at her for a moment. Okay. His voice was unusually loud. Li Hongyuan went out like a ghost, but he just sat in the outer room. However, no one dared to look at him. That aura was too scary. They sincerely prayed that the Empress was fine. Otherwise, the palace would become hell. The 2 female doctors beside Gongjiu went in first. They knew what to do. When Gongjiu went in, all he could see was Jingwan's belly. Gongjiu. Your Highness. Gongjiu lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes, waiting for Jingwan's orders. Please. I can't die. Jingwan was not only worried about how her husband would break down if something happened to her, but she also didn't want to leave him. She really didn't want to. I will do my best, Gongjiu said firmly. Okay. Jingwan slowly closed her eyes. Next, she didn't need to do anything. Acupuncture and Mephisin. Soon, Jingwan was silent and fell into a deep sleep. Then, the people in the room witnessed the first cesarean section. It was bloody, but it was also full of hope and vitality. Then, not long after, they heard cries, which almost made the people outside cry. However, Li Hongyuan's surroundings didn't warm up at all. The baby was washed and wrapped up. The people in the room took turns to look at him. It was a little prince. He looked healthy. Naturally, they were more concerned about Jingwan's condition. Under the signal of Madame Luo and the others, Granny Gong carried the baby out. However, Granny Gong only dared to stand 3 steps away from Li Hongyuan. Your Majesty, get out. That one word almost scared the people who didn't care about anything inside or outside. Granny Gong didn't show any expression on her face. She didn't blame Li Hongyuan, but she was worried about Jingwan. She lowered her head to look at the baby in the swaddling clothes. The baby's face was wrinkled and red, and there was some white fetal skin on his head. This baby was born to be noble, but he was destined to be disliked by his father. Granny Gong thought for a while, and decided to carry the baby out to the imperial physicians. Gongjiu was busy with the Empress's affairs and hadn't checked the little prince's condition. The imperial physicians, who were stiff, were happy to see the little prince. However, they didn't know the Empress's condition, so they didn't dare to show their emotions. The imperial physicians took turns to check the little prince's pulse. They were all sure that he was healthy. This was good news. But, Your Highness, you also want the Empress to be well, right? If the Empress wasn't well, The emperor might strangle him with his own hands. The only thing they could do now was to wait. They kept waiting until Gongjiu came out. Your Majesty, the Empress is well. Li Hongyuan's breath warmed up quickly. His whole body was like a broken string, and he collapsed quickly. Reward. Then he got up and staggered into the inner room. He approached the bed and grabbed Jingwan's hand. Wan. He blacked out and fainted. However, there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. He vaguely heard people outside saying, "Long live the Emperor, long live the Empress, long live the Empress." https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/16201362. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, mbicon.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.